Chapter 488. Leaving the region of flames 5. Saying this, Nangong Luyan left her behind to cultivate, as he again followed yesterday's track to look for a way out. These dozen or so days he had never given up on finding a way out, because he must bring Su Luo out of here. He didn't have the heart to have Su Luo accompany him, squandering away time in this cave of flames. Such a huge cave of flames, more than half of it was already searched by him using a grid pattern, but there was still the southeast area that remained and that he hasn't visited before. Now he was just using all his strength to search in this area. Su Luo's attention was still placed upon that piece of strange stone. What amazed people was that the surrounding temperature really was a little lower, to the extent that she could withstand the heat for the time it took to burn a stick of incense. In the end, what was really inside this stone? It was simply too strange. Su Luo held it and examined it from left to right. She always felt that there was a very mystical existence inside, waiting for her to discover it from her exploration. When Su Luo put her spirit force into the stone, besides feeling that the inside temperature could burn her hand, she couldn't find anything else. Previously, this chunk of stone could still shriek and nearly draw Li Aoyan's pursuit to kill her. But now, it seemed to have sunk into a deep sleep without even the slightest reaction. But as per Nangong Liuyun's honest words, she really was extremely lucky. It was because this stone had already recognized her as its master from the drops of her blood. The more flames it absorbed, then the greater it would be in assisting her in cultivating the fire attribute. At this point of time, Su Luo really couldn't help but wish it could absorb all the blazing flames within the entire cave. As far as Su Luo was concerned, this cave of flames was really an exceptionally great place to cultivate. There wasn't another place that could compare to this naturally formed cave of flames. Since there was such a great environment for cultivation, Su Luo naturally wouldn't waste it. Therefore, these days, she had all along been cultivating with the greatest effort. Besides eating and sleeping, she was cultivating all the time. Moreover, she was cultivating both inside and outside of her space at the same time. After about another 10 days had passed, Su Luo, from the beginning of 4th rank, all at once soared to the middle of 4th rank. Su Luo's, this kind of cultivation, no matter where she was placed, it was an occurrence that would make people gasp in surprise. Concurrently, more than half of the flames in this cave was absorbed by that strange stone. The temperature all around had dropped down in surrender. Now even if Su Luo's hand wasn't holding the stone, she could still cultivate safely. This was merely a short period of 10 days, to have improved this quickly. Not only Su Luo, even Nangong Luyan was speechless. This kind of cultivation speed, a problem wouldn't arise, right? Su Luo looked at her own pair of hands, the corner of her mouth twitching slightly. According to what she knew, a lot of people with pretty good talent. From the beginning to the middle of 4th rank, without a year's time, it was absolutely impossible. But it was just 10 days for her, 10 days This was simply, she couldn't even find words to describe it. Nangong Luyan thoroughly and carefully examined her body once over. Finally, he relaxed the breath he was holding, then rubbed her head. There is no harm to your body. The promotion of your strength can also be considered to be stable. It can be assumed that there will be no problems. Then that's great. Su Luo spread out both of her hands, expressing her lack of choice. Sometimes, when strength was promoted too fast, it was also a kind of burden. However, a worried expression very quickly appeared on Su Luo's face, as she let out a sigh. Calculating the days, after another 3 days, it will be the agreed-upon life and death duel, but I can't get out. Su Luo was really worried. She was not the kind of person that would cower. She had already accepted the written challenge. If she didn't appear, how could she still live in the capital? To say nothing of her strength rising so much right now, this was the best time for her to display her full capabilities. To be trapped like this, it made her feel as if she had smashed her fist into a pile of cotton. The corner of Nangong Liuyun's mouth merely hooked up, his smile somewhat mysterious. He pulled on Su Luo's hand and said, "Come, follow this king for a walk." "Where are we going?" Su Luo curiously asked. Nangong Luyan merely smiled enigmatically and kept her in suspense. "Once we get there, you will know." The cave of flames was very large. All around were the golden color of blazing flames, and visibility was very low. One of Su Luo's hand was being pulled along by Nangong Luoyun. The other hand held onto the stone, following along the meandering passageway to walk forward. Didn't know for how long they had walked, when up ahead, a very small stone room appeared. Nangong Luoyun familiarly pushed open the heavy stone door, leading Su Luo by the hand. They entered together. Oh, seeing the thing in front of her eyes, Su Luo couldn't help but to cry out in surprise. There was a very peculiarly shaped golden coffin. Chapter 489. Leaving the region of flames 6. There was a dim layer of fluorescence floating around the golden coffin, like a transparent protective cover safeguarding the coffin within, not allowing a person to easily touch it. This is... Su Luo looked doubtfully at Nangong Luoyun. This is a kind of ancient seal formation. Nangong Luoyun's features were picturesque with a purely sparkling appearance. He paused for a bit, then continued to explain. As long as we can open the golden coffin, we will be able to go out. In her heart, Su Luo realized that the seal, traps and concealed weapons within this stone room had all been dealt with earlier by Nangong Luoyun. Otherwise, they wouldn't be standing here so safely. And there are words here. Su Luo pointed to the place under the golden coffin's underside, reading out loud, word by word. If you want to activate this formation, the energies from 1,000 green-colored crystal stones are required. 1,000 pieces? That many? Su Luo couldn't help but to blink her eyes a few times, speechlessly holding her forehead. Isn't this simply just conning people? Where will you find someone that would carry so many crystal stones on their body? Nangong Luoyun stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes as deep and pitch black as a lake. He calmly nodded. Clearly this rule was tailor-made for you. Su Luo's entire face was full of black lines. She had no choice but to admit that Nangong Luoyun's words were extremely correct. Apart from her who was lucky enough to carry her space with her, other people really didn't have the capabilities to all at once pay out this many crystal stones. Su Luo felt her flesh hurting as she complained. The expense of leaving home is 1,000 green crystal stones. It really is a lion with its mouth wide open. It really is that if you have never been in charge of a household, you don't know how expensive wood and rice are. However, the only thing that made Su Luo's mind more at peace was that the crown prince still owed her a great debt. Wait until she got out. This debt must be transferred to the crown prince. Su Luo, while pouting and murmuring her complaints, reached her hand into her space to grab some. This grab made her expression freeze and immediately change. Nangong Luoyun's bright, deep eyes that held back landed on Su Luo's face. What's wrong? Su Luo's face had a wishing to cry, but lacking the tears expression said. My crystal stones. They are completely gone. Nangong Luoyun was still as unperturbed as before. What happened? Su Luo did not answer him, merely with one pull. She lifted out the main culprit, glaring very fiercely at him. Now, the little divine dragon was cowering in fear, curled up into a ball, two little paws covering his face. He only dared to stealthily take measure of Su Luo through the narrow slit of his fingers. Su Luo was so angry that she nearly slapped his little butt. This damn child, stealthily eating all the crystal stones as snacks, too abominable. This really is that it's difficult to protect against the thief that comes from your own home. She remembered that at that time when they entered the stone room, there were many crystal stone in the sea-colored bowl of the amethyst crystal fish. Besides green-colored crystal stones, there were also cyan and blue-colored crystal stones. But just a moment ago, when Su Luo searched around, she discovered that not even a hair remained. The little divine dragon blinked his huge limpid eyes, innocently and also bewilderedly looking at Su Luo. That little appearance seemed miserable, resulting in Su Luo unable to make a move to teach him a lesson. Su Luo remained silent and could only glare at him accusingly. This child, how could you think to eat it all as snacks? Should have saved some for illegal tolls. Now we can't get out. Rushing to catch the time for the appointment, with great difficulty, they found a door but now couldn't go out. This kind of feeling was the most gloomy and suffocating. The little divine dragon silently glanced at Su Luo, crooked his head and thought for some time. Finally, he still made a firm decision and took out a blue-colored crystal stone from his own pocket. He reluctantly handed it over to Su Luo. Before, Su Luo had specifically asked Lu Luo to make clothes for the little puppy to wear, and she had even sewn on a few pockets. As soon as she saw that blue crystal stone with teeth marks that had had half of it chewed away, Su Luo nearly exploded. Chapter 490. Leaving the Region of Flames 7. You are still hiding food. Su Luo glared at him. The little divine dragon shrank back, and again from his own pocket, silently, slowly, reluctantly, and after hesitating for a long time, finally, this time, handed an intact, blue-colored crystal stone over to Su Luo. Su Luo gave a sigh. Forget it, first put it aside, wait until there isn't enough, and I'll find you to try to gather the rest. That reluctant to part with little appearance, looking at it was really too pathetic, making her seem like a female bandit. It was truly annoying. Su Luo recalled that previously, she had placed a lot of amethyst thorn fishes into her space. These days, she and Nangong Luyan ate a few, but there ought to still be a lot left over. Su Luo checked once through and also added the 1.5 pieces of blue-colored crystal stone. After counting it over and over again, she was still a few short. As a result, she once again lifted up the little miser in front of her by the ear. The miserly little divine dragon, with an aggrieved expression, once again took out a few pieces from his pocket and gave them to Su Luo. Afterwards, he snorted twice and turned his head away with his little mouth pouting. His tail was sticking up. Clearly, he was very peeved at Su Luo. This little thing also started to have a temper, truly rare to see. Su Luo could only smile and coax him. While rubbing the fur under his chin, she promised, Okay, within the next month, regardless of what crystal stone the amethyst crystal fish spits out, all will be given to you. This will make up for it, right? Only now was the little divine dragon happy, excitedly shaking his tail, again rushing into Su Luo's embrace, acting cute to rub against her. Su Luo patted his little head, and thought somewhat worriedly. This little thing was obviously the dragon race's most respected golden divine dragon, but was raised by her to resemble a puppy more and more. Wait until the little divine dragon's father came to retrieve him. Didn't know if he would look for her to settle this debt. But this was not the most worrying matter. The thing that made her most depressed was after she had gathered enough crystals to activate the formation. She then discovered that she was already so poor as to have nowhere to go. Except for the amethyst crystal fish that could spit out crystal stones like a hen laying eggs, Su Luo didn't even have a red crystal stone in her hand. She was really so poor as to have empty ringing sounds in her pockets. The pitiful her didn't know that within the next month in the future, the little divine dragon's luck was full to bursting. The amethyst crystal fish gave him a lot of face. All the crystal stones it spit out was high grade, frankly making Su Luo so jealous until her eyes were red. This was something that happened later. After scraping together enough crystal stones, Su Luo handed everything over to Nangong Luyan. Nangong Luyan extracted all the energy from the amethyst thorn fishes and crystal stones, and placed it in the middle of the formation. Nangong Luyan's phoenix eyes were tightly closed. Only his hands were forming hand seals at lightning speed. He formed many seals with his hands. Each and every one of them was very complicated. These seals were like characters shooting around on top of the transparent protective layer. Time passed, little by little. Didn't know how much time had passed, before Nangong Luyan suddenly opened his pair of eyes. He grabbed Su Luo by the hand, bringing her to enter the golden coffin together. Lying inside the golden coffin, the top, with a thump, closed. All around was pitch black. The space inside the golden coffin was not large. 2 people lying inside was somewhat crowded. Nangong Luyan easily turned, and had Su Luo's entire body rested on his body. Su Luo's head just happened to bump into his chest, and she could clearly hear Nangong Luyan's heartbeat. Nangong Luyan calmly said, "If we could be born under the same blanket and die in the same coffin, then it's also pretty good." Su Luo's words dampened the mood. "I want to live well, and keep living for a very long time." Nangong Luyan pinched the tip of her nose, raising his sharp eyebrows with a ghost of a smile. "That way is even better. This king will stick to you for a very long time." Su Luo rolled her eyes at him. Suddenly, a strong spirit force attacked towards their forehead. Su Luo felt a burst of dizziness and shook her head. Very quickly, she sunk into a swamp-like darkness. Chapter 491, Leaving the Region of Flames, 8. When Su Luo woke up again, she found herself lying in Nangong Liuyun's embrace. She opened her eyes, and the first things that entered her field of vision were blue skies and white clouds, the green grass with fresh and clean air, and there was no roasting temperature. Su Luo all at once sat up from being startled. Bang! Su Luo suddenly sitting up without any warning, and Nangong Luyun, who just so happened to be leaning over to wipe her face, purely by chance their heads knocked together. Ouch! She covered her face and nose. The tip of her nose and her forehead was bumped, making them extremely sore. Nangong Luyun laughingly helped her massage her forehead. With deep eyes that were charming, gentle and alluring, he softly asked, "How is it? Does it still hurt?" When he was massaging it, he also poured in a cool, refreshing stream of spirit power. Su Luo's burning pain from before immediately disappeared. "It's much better." Su Luo patted her somewhat dizzy head, with her pair of eyes looking around. "Is this considered as us having gotten out?" This area, she was very familiar with. At that time, she had been hit by Li Outyin until she spit out blood, and had run all the way towards the Cave of Flames. Along the entire way, she had been continuously slapped till she spit out blood. How could she ever forget this road? It was just a short time ago. Things remained the same, but people had changed. Li Outyin was already dead, whereas they had walked out alive from that Cave of Flames. What day is today? Su Luo didn't know how long she was unconscious. Nangong Luyun knew the meaning of her words and said, "Don't worry, there are still 2 days until the competition." That was to say, she had been unconscious for a whole day and night? She still remembered that Nangong Liuyun's luxurious yacht, from the seacoast of the mainland to Amethyst Island, took an entire day and night. Afterwards, she had drifted blindly with the waves, floating for another day and night before arriving at this uninhibited island. Now they didn't even have a wooden raft. Perhaps they wouldn't make it in time. "Must you go and participate?" Nangong Luyun gazed seriously at Su Luo. His handsome face was as though it had been carved with a knife, with beautiful eyes that was deep and mirror-like of a lake. According to his idea, he would just send people to directly get rid of Su Qing, and it would be settled. Why go to so much trouble? Su Luo raised an eyebrow. She looked at him with a serene expression, her tone serious. "This is my first fight in front of the public. I must show up." If she hadn't exposed her strength, then it was tolerable, but since her strength had already been exposed, then she might as well confidently show it off, so as to avoid those people still trampling on her like weeds. "Since you are determined to do this king will naturally help you achieve your heart's desires." Nangong Luyun smilingly looked at her, and picked up a block of hollow wood in passing. Then he pulled her along to walk in the direction of the beach. "Just this block of hollow wood?" Su Luo raised her head to look at Nangong Luyun in puzzlement. Now his fair handsome face, with the bridge of his nose sticking up high, its outline seemed to have been carved by nature. The corners were distinct, making his handsomeness one that could not be produced locally, a bewitching beauty that made it nearly impossible for people to shift their gaze away. Nangong Luyun pulled her along, his body tall and straight. His speed was as fast as flying, and very quickly, they arrived at the edge of the beach. He conveniently tossed that block of hollow wood, which was about 1/2 meter long and 1/4 meter wide, towards the sea. "Are we not going to make a wooden raft?" Su Luo thought about it and still felt it was unsafe. "Do you trust this king?" The corner of his eyes and the tip of his brow carried a smiling expression, as he earnestly looked at Su Luo. "I trust you." Su Luo's pair of eyes was as black as a dot of lacquer, glistening and shining. "Then just firmly believe to the end. This king will prove it for you to see how correct the choice you made is." Nangong Luyun held onto her hand tightly, rose very quickly and shot towards that hollow wood that had already floated far away. Very quickly, he brought Su Luo to land steadily on top of that hollow wood. "Let's go." Nangong Luyun gave a hearty laugh towards her. Pulling on her hand, the two of them stood on the hollow wood, with one in the front and the other in the back. Following one command from Nangong Luyun, That piece of hollow wood bearing the weight of 2 people suddenly seemed to have had a heavy-duty motor installed on it, and very rapidly flew forward. Chapter 492, Leaving the Region of Flames 9. Su Luo was able to sense Nangong Luyan controlling all the wind power in the surroundings. He condensed, mixed, then compressed the wind force before finally using it to push this hollow wood forward with flying speed. Su Luo heard the surrounding wind blowing around making howling sounds, but she couldn't feel the cold. Due to Nangong Luyan controlling the wind speed, it was as if a transparent cover surrounded their body. Not even a thread of cold air was allowed to leak in. Su Luo turned her head around to look at where the hollow wood rushed across. It left behind a long watermark that didn't disperse for a long time. This kind of speed was a lot faster compared to the speed of the luxurious yacht from before. Suddenly, Su Luo's complexion changed slightly. The region of waterspouts. Su Luo firmly grasped Nangong Liuyun's hand as she said in a low voice. Her tone carried a little anxiety. Before, the occurrences from crossing this region of waterspouts was still vivid in her mind. She saw with her own eyes the powerful Lan Xian, and them also spending a tremendous amount of strength before they crossed it. Let alone mentioning that at that time, they had a luxurious yacht, whereas now, they only had a very small piece of wood. Don't be afraid, you have this king present. Nangong Liuyun's face was picturesque, his lips were blood red. He patted her head while smiling. Open your eyes wide. Watch this king perform some special stunts for you to see. Each and every one of the black-colored spirals gave off a blistering atmosphere, like the death god opening his bloody mouth greedily. If you were inattentive, you would be swallowed, not even leaving a skeleton behind. Even confronted with such a legendary ghostly prison, Nangong Liuyun's expression did not change. He even smiled. A smile that resembled the light clouds and gentle wind. In between the 2 water spirals pressed together, one could only see his foot step down slightly, and they passed through the middle like a rocket. Their speed was fast to the extreme, only leaving behind a white-colored afterimage. Up ahead again, there were another 3 black spirals side by side. Nangong Luyan hugged Su Luo close to him by her slender waist. That hollow piece of wood seemed to be stuck to their feet. Nangong Luyan carried the hollow wood and jumped high up, landing a distance of more than 30 meters ahead into a tranquil region of water. They passed through this scary experience without mishap. The entire region of waterspouts. There was no pattern to the densely packed waterspouts. Nangong Luyan brought Su Luo through these waterspouts while stepping on the hollow wood, avoiding to the left and dodging to the right. Nangong Liuyun's movements seemed to be barging violently around, but in fact, every step he made was accurately calculated by his wise and far-sighted brain. Furthermore, every step landed perfectly, being more frightening than harmful. This kind of experience was simply too thrilling, stimulating, and also fun. In the beginning, Su Luo was still a little anxious, but afterwards, her mood didn't even have the slightest sign of being worried. Moreover, she also felt that it was extremely fun. Compared to this, bungee jumping, rock climbing, sailing, these kind of extreme sports were simply too pathetic, don't you think? Is it fun? Nangong Luyan held on tightly to her waist, ensuring that she was in an area within reach. Yes. Really enjoyable. Su Luo excitedly nodded her head. She still recalled when Beichening mocked Lan Xian and Anya, saying that the time it took them to cross the region of waterspouts with their combined effort also could not be compared to a trace of Nangong Liuyun's. Previously she didn't believe it, but now, she believed it firmly without any doubt. Nangong Luyan really did have this kind of strength. In this region of waterspouts that everyone feared and couldn't avoid. In this ghostly prison of whirlpools that had buried a countless number of traveling ships. With regards to the young lovers, this place had become an adventurous game for them, playing until they were extremely happy and satisfied. If other people were to catch sight of this, very likely, they would be considered lunatics. They really hadn't seen people take the region of waterspouts as a playground. Nangong Liuyun's speed was very fast. He finished crossing through this huge region of waterspouts in less time than it took to burn a stick of incense. Seeing Su Luo having so much fun that she wished to continue, Nangong Luyan laughingly pinched the tip of her nose. This region of waterspouts isn't considered much. Next time, This king will take you to 1,000 miles of ghostly prison. Now, that place is really fun. Chapter 493. Leaving the Region of Flames 10. A place that could be called as fun by Nangong Luyan. Su Luo felt it was better she didn't go to be clever, so as to avoid losing her little life when not being careful while playing. Su Luo changed the topic. According to this speed, we ought to make it in time. A day had already passed. They only had the last 24 hours left. This is needless worrying, however. If we had a boat, you would be more comfortable. Nangong Luyan nodded his head, but very quickly, his face had a pondering, smiling expression. What's going on? Su Luo followed his line of sight to look forward, and saw a black dot with flying speed continuously approaching their location. That clearly was a boat. This really is dozing off and being presented with a pillow. We just so happened to chance upon it. A crafty smile appeared on Su Luo's mouth. You take a guess, is it Bei Chen Ying and them coming to look for us? Nangong Luyan very surely and very disdainfully shook his head. Bei Chen Ying's boat isn't this bad. Su Luo was speechless. This guy's point of view while identifying things was different than other people. Yet, she had no choice but to concede that what he said made some sense. Very quickly, that boat appeared in front of Su Luo and Nangong Luyan. A middle-aged fellow with a vulgar appearance. When he saw Su Luo, immediately, his eyes brightened, smiling until he exposed a mouthful of yellow teeth. Little lady, why should you be drifting on the ocean? Quickly, come get on the boat. On our boat, we have food, drinks and even hot water to bathe with. Much better than drifting on the ocean. This person ran around on the boat all year long. He was well versed and keenly knew this line of work. People that were drifting in the ocean. What they wanted the most was a mouthful of hot food, and having some fresh water to drink. Who knew that Su Luo would only shoot an indifferent glance at him, and turn her head around to ask Nangong Luyan. Should we go up or not? Before Nangong Luyan could speak, that vulgar, middle-aged fellow said a sentence in rebuke. He cannot come up. Why can't he come up? Why is it that you guys are rescuing people, and can only save one person? Su Luo pretended to be furious and shouted. Save people? Ha! Suddenly, each and every one of the strong and manly guys that appeared, pointed to Su Luo and burst into loud laughter. That vulgar, middle-aged guy laughed even more while holding his belly. Little girl, you didn't think that we would be your saviors, right? Even saving people. Too ridiculous and funny. An onlooker in yellow clothing continued while laughing. Does the little lady know how to read? Look at our name. Dragon Gang of the Eastern Sea? Su Luo doubtfully asked Nangong Luyan. Have you heard of them? Nangong Luyan's pair of deep, lake-like eyes that was holding back, showed a faint, belittling and ice-cold expression. A little gang that doesn't have the qualifications to enter this king's ear. So arrogant, so powerful, so domineering of a remark. If Nangong Luyan hadn't spoken, it would have been fine. Him saying this, he immediately offended the entire Dragon Gang of the Eastern Sea. Daring to look down upon our Dragon Gang of the Eastern Sea is simply courting death. That vulgar, middle-aged fellow shouted out loud. Courting death. A dense crowd of strong, manly guys simultaneously said repeatedly. Suddenly, they were imposing and very formidable. People come, kill this man and capture this woman, and send her as a present to be our leader's wife. Our leader will definitely reward us well. The vulgar, middle-aged fellow directly gave the order. The gaze he used to look at Su Luo gave off a strand of bright radiance. It was rare to encounter a pretty young lady on the ocean. If he let her get away, wasn't it a waste of natural resources? This dragon of the Eastern Sea was not merely a single boat. After a rough count, there were actually as many as 6 boats. Consequently, the 6 boats powerfully closed in around them, surrounding the hollow wood that Nangong Luyan and Su Luo stood upon. Nangong Luyan's blood-red lips hooked up slightly. Instantly, he looked exceptionally beautiful, demonically insincere and matchless alluring. This smile of his was just like his remark from before, once again infuriating the Dragon Gang of the Eastern Sea. Chapter 494. Life and Death Duel 1. Seeing these boats sailing towards them to surround them. The corner of Nangong Liuyun's mouth lifted into a mocking, apathetic smile. Little young lady, quickly get on the boat, otherwise you will also die. The vulgar, middle-aged guy said loudly toward Su Luo. A faint smile appeared in the depths of Su Luo's eyes. No need. Why should you lose your life because of a repulsive male? Swords and spears have no eyes. At that time, when it accidentally injures a little beauty like you, then it will be unfortunate. Oh, quickly come on up, this uncle will love you dearly. The middle-aged fellow displayed a mouthful of yellow teeth, his smile extremely vulgar. Having heard what was said, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a ridiculing sneer. Don't need to be lenient on my account, come at me with as many as you've got. The strength of these small fries were too weak. She was only worried that Nangong Luoyun would not face enough of a fight to enjoy himself. With this being the case, then don't blame us for not having tender protective feelings towards the fairer sex. Brothers, kill this man and everyone will be rewarded well. The vulgar, middle-aged fellow saw Su Luo was ungrateful for the toast and would rather drink sour wine, so he also stopped being protective towards the fairer sex and loudly shouted the command. As you command. A dense crowd of people below attacked towards the place where Nangong Luoyun stood. A stream of sharp arrows was launched, bursting out like lightning, issuing an ear-piercing sound that rent the sky. There were many arrows and they were fast. In addition, the angle was tricky, impossible for a person to defend against effectively. Normally, they depended on this trick to run amok and had no fear on the Eastern Sea, robbing a countless number of boats. This time, they were all fully confident, because a male and female drifting blindly on the ocean. Then shouldn't they be fairly easy to catch? The corner of Nangong Liuyun's mouth slowly evoked into an indifferent and icily arrogant smile. Without seeing how he moved, even his sleeves didn't lift up by the slightest bit. A strong spirit power burst out, forming a transparent protective layer around him and Su Luo. Bang, bang, bang. Those shooting arrows ran into the transparent protective cover, tried to thrust in deeply, but could not move forward in the slightest. Now that protective transparent cover seemed to have been formed from many bright holes like a straw boat, as if specially made to catch the arrows. Once the vulgar, middle-aged fellow saw this position, his expression immediately became exceptionally ugly, his anger directly exploding. The dragon gang of the Eastern Sea had always run amok on this sea and was feared. Now were they being taught a lesson by these people? If they couldn't get back their face in this public place, how could they still live on the Eastern Sea? Brothers, add in more strength. There are only two people on the opponent's side. If we just spit and curse, we will be able to drown him. Everyone, don't get discouraged, continue to attack. An imposing order to attack was issued without the slightest hesitation. It's poisoned. Su Luo pointed at those arrows that Nangong Luoyun had frozen around his body. Her eyes were ice-cold as she indifferently said it. The front of the arrow was emitting a faint fragrance. If you were hit by the arrow, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. As an elementary apothecary, this kind of nine-tailed, red scorpion poison, Su Luo was still able to recognize. Nangong Luoyun smiled faintly and was unconcerned about it. One could only see his sleeves roll over, brushing towards the front. That movement was as casual as brushing away dust. But his casual movement, with regards to the pirates encircling them, was actually fatal. One could only see the arrows frozen by Nangong Liuyun's protective layer. Unexpectedly, all of them turned around and ruthlessly shot towards where they came from. It seemed as if these arrows had grown eyes. Whoever launched it, it will shoot back towards them. Under Nangong Liuyun's control, these arrows were as intense as a storm shower, an impossible force to resist. Swoosh, 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 the crashing sounds from piercing through the wind echoed in the air. Immediately, a terrified and shocked expression appeared on all the faces of the pirates. Each and every one of them was scared until they were dumbfounded. They simply could never have imagined that such a reversal that startled the heavens would occur like this. Chapter 495, Life and Death Duel, 2. Twing thump, just at the moment they were startled, the sound of arrow after arrow shooting into their flesh came in an unbroken succession. The pirates that were hit immediately screamed repeatedly. The cries of pain were non-stop and extremely tragic. Originally, these pirates were still strutting around very arrogantly, but with a slight brush of Nangong Liuyun's sleeves, all of their bodies were hit with arrows. The lucky ones weakly toppled onto the deck, wailing in anguish again and again. Some stood unsteadily and directly rolled into the ocean. In a split second, they were washed away by the sea until they were nowhere to be found. Nangong Liuyun's accuracy and control had simply reached perfection. He didn't let the arrow enter vital parts of their bodies, rather he shot it into their arms, thighs and places where meat was thick with coarse skin. If everyone thought that this was Nangong Luyun being merciful and kind-hearted, being lenient with his actions, then they would be gravely mistaken. The tip of the arrow was smeared with extremely toxic poison. The people that were shot were going to die anyway. Him shooting the arrows towards their non-vital parts was merely to let them suffer a little longer before dying, and nothing more. Now Nangong Luyun was holding on to Su Luo, calmly standing in the middle of that narrow, hollow wood. At this moment, his brocade robe danced lightly. He had a smiling expression like a handsome noble sun in the troubled world. Standing alone among this generation, he was so exceedingly refined. It was as if at any moment, he would be promoted to become an immortal. He had a careless smile on his face that was laid back and as light as clouds and gentle as the wind, as if the surrounding tragic sight and desperate scene wasn't even the tiniest bit related to him. Su Luo couldn't help but sigh secretly in her heart. Those people that became the enemy of this man, how unfortunate could they be? This kind of Nangong Luyun, who would dare to have him as an enemy? Is this stage show still fun to watch? Nangong Luyun bent over as he smilingly looked at Su Luo. Killing people like cutting grass, wearing a smiling expression, and also saying that this was merely a staged show. Su Luo felt that compared to him, she didn't even have the demeanor of a killer. If Luo girl is still dissatisfied, then... A shallow, unrestrained smile appeared on Nangong Liuyun's face. His beautiful eyes were brilliant and overflowing with color, as if he had again found something fun to play with. Once these words were said, the people that were still alive on that boat was immediately scared pale. Especially that middle-aged, vulgar fellow. His martial arts cultivation, among this crowd of people, was considered the best, so when Nangong Luyun reflected back those arrows, he was also the fastest to avoid them. Not to mention before, he had pushed himself too much into the limelight. A bird that pokes its head out, gets shot. This reasoning he hadn't understood since the beginning. Just based on those few disgraceful sentences he said about Su Luo. How could Nangong Luyun forgive him? Nangong Luyun naturally would attend to him the most. Altogether, just counting the arrows alone that swiped by his body, on his head, face, body and surroundings, every time, all the arrows swiped by, leaving behind a very small cut. It was not enough to take his life, but this kind of poison had a special trait that it was itchy. An unusual itch. Now this middle-aged vulgar fellow's entire head and face was swollen like a pig's head. Even that pair of eyes was also swollen beyond recognition. Spare our lives, noble swordsman, chivalrous female. It was our eyes that had failed to recognize Mount Tai. Breaking ground over the head of the god of the year. Tai sways, we beg you guys. Consider the fact that we are all poisoned. Please spare us. Nangong Luyun, relying on just one move. No, he didn't even need one move to make all of them despondent enough to spit out blood. How could little fries like them dare to contend against such strength? Perhaps even the boss wouldn't be able to use 10 moves in the hands of this expert. This person was simply too strong. Didn't know from where he popped out from. Nangong Luyun merely swept them with an indifferent glance. He didn't even bat an eye. That middle-aged vulgar fellow was also one who could read people. His ability to read someone's body language was not lacking. Otherwise, it was unlikely for him to have crawled up to this position. Chapter 496, Life and Death Duel 3. One could see him endure the pain, with great difficulty kneeling towards Su Luo, and with a loud voice, begged for forgiveness. Young lady, such a kind-hearted person, please just let us go. We will be grateful for your great kindness and favor for the rest of our lives. Begging you, at the same time. Those hired thugs in the surroundings also dragged their bodies that were enduring the difficult itchiness, and all kneeled towards Su Luo to beg for forgiveness. Su Luo merely looked at them indifferently. her expression unsympathetic. If she really was merely a simple, kind-hearted, ignorant young lady from a rich residence, maybe she really would become soft-hearted from guilt because of them begging for forgiveness. But that was not her. Her previous incarnation had always lived in the secret, underworld, living a life on the edge of a knife and lapping up blood. What was kind-hearted? What was merciful? She didn't know. It didn't exist in her dictionary. She only knew that if she didn't behead the grass at the roots, once the spring wind blew, it would live once again. She only knew to nip the problem in the bud, or else she would suffer harm. Consequently, the corner of Su Luo's mouth only smiled, as she looked at these people who originally wanted to indifferently put them to death. She didn't even say half a sentence's worth to let them go. The hearts of those pirates begging for forgiveness couldn't help but be secretly furious, cursing Su Luo as being vicious and merciless, not saving someone who was about to die in front of her. Su Luo turned her gaze to look towards Nangong Luyan with a ghost of a smile, and said, "Not pleading for leniency on their behalf, are you disappointed? Generally, didn't a man like a kind-hearted, little, white rabbit, a delicate daughter flower?" But she, on the other, had walked a contrary road. Nangong Luyan didn't speak, but with one pull, hugged Su Luo to his chest. His lips stuck up like a water caltrop, seemingly very satisfied with her response. "This king likes just your kind." Nangong Luyan left a kiss on her cheek. At this time, with everyone bitterly wailing and in anguish, crying to the heavens and rushing to the ground, it was something only Nangong Luyan, this kind of talented person with no regards for others, could do. Su Luo disgruntledly rolled her eyes at him. Nangong Luyan again seized the opportunity to steal a kiss. Nangong Luyan seemed to feel that bantering flirtatiously with Su Luo and being watched by these people was a type of blasphemy. With a careless wave of his hand, disdainful as if dispatching a housefly, "Get lost, get lost, get lost." These people were excited as if receiving a general pardon. Each and every one of them hurriedly crawled up. People that weighed the anchor, the ones that steered the ship went to steer the ship, urging the ship to leave at flying speed. Su Luo looked at Nangong Luyan inquisitively. With regards to her understanding of him, this man was accustomed to being petty. If there was a hatred, he must avenge it. He would also get it back at double the original. How could he let them go so easily? As expected, Nangong Luyan calmly nodded his head and said, "As for the Dragon Gang of the Eastern Sea, from now on, this name won't exist anymore. What did you stealthily do again?" Su Luo's entire face was full of curiosity. Just a moment ago, she was staring at Nangong Luyan all along, but didn't find any clue. Her guess was merely based on her understanding of his nature. Nangong Luyan, in a spoiling manner, pinched the tip of Su Luo's nose, raised an eyebrow and smiled. "It's nothing, just merely smeared a little tracing drug on the tip of the arrows, that's all." "Is this your plan to eliminate them in one stroke?" "Yes." Nangong Luyan faintly nodded his head. "The pirates of the Eastern Sea have successfully become big news. The Dragon Gang is the most outstanding among them. Them robbing friendly merchant ships is no longer a secret. Normally, these ships appear like a god and vanish like a devil. If they encounter Imperial troops, they escape very rapidly. Therefore, the troops sent to suppress them have never succeeded." Su Luo smilingly continued and added to his speech. "Who knew that these pirates would have a heavenly road and refuse to walk it, and instead charge through the gates of hell? They just so happened to bump into your hand. It really could be said that God's eyes are wide open." Su Luo said again with much regret, "It's a pity we need to rush back, otherwise we could immediately send armed troops to suppress them." Again, why would it be so hard? Nangong Luoyun's thumb and forefinger was placed at the edge of his lips. The alluring red lips blew out a strange sound, so sharp as to split the sky. It was transmitted very far. Chapter 497. Life and Death Duel 4. A black dot could be seen in the distance. As it came closer, Su Luo noticed that it was a yacht. It was currently heading towards their current position at full speed. "Heavens, it's actually your luxurious yacht." Su Luo finally recognized it. This was the luxurious yacht that had carried them to the amethyst-thorned island to catch amethyst-thorned fish that day. Su Luo was looking at Nangong Luyin mystically. How could he have known that this luxurious yacht was nearby? She felt as if there really wasn't anything that would stump him. As long as she suggested it, he could accomplish it with a wave of his hand, easily and simply. This man, in the end, how many more methods did he still have? How many more skills that he hadn't revealed? How many more mysterious things were still waiting for her to unearth? The luxurious yacht just so happened to stop right in front of them. On the deck, Bei Chening quickly jumped out, throwing himself towards Nangong Luyin and Su Luo. He was so emotional that his eyes were nearly filled to the brim with tears of excitement. These days, where did you guys run off to? You guys almost worried us to death. We sailed the yacht everywhere in the nearby seas to look for you guys. Bei Chening hadn't even physically arrived yet before loudly complaining and reproaching them. Nangong Luyin held onto Su Luo's slender waist and quickly jumped to the top of the deck. He indifferently swept Bei Chening a glance, throwing down a sentence for him without batting an eye. Foolishly worrying about nothing. Bei Chening stiffened his neck and humphed twice. I know you have 9 lives, so definitely not worried about you. We were worried about sister-in-law. You don't know, that day we all fell into a trap. The only people remaining at the scene were sister-in-law and Li Outyan, these 2 people. At that time, the more we thought, the more fearful we were and itching to fly up immediately. It was unfortunate that no matter what, we were unable to escape from the trap. Bei Chening patted his chest from lingering fear. They were definitely not fools, naturally. They could see Outyan and his sister's enmity towards Su Luo. With the few of them present, Li Outyan naturally wouldn't dare do anything, but unfortunately, only Su Luo remained, so it was hard to fathom whether she would live or die. Su Luo shallowly smiled. Look here, aren't I healthy and active? Don't have even a bit of problem. Just knew that sister-in-law's flood of good fortune fills the heavens, and the heavens help the worthy. Bei Chening foolishly smiled while stroking his head. Oh, that's right, all the people from the Li family are trying to find Li Outyan. Has sister-in-law seen him? Li Outyan? This tragic man would always remain behind on the barren hill of the isolated island. Even his bones were swallowed up by the cave of flames until nothing was left, not even a little trace remained. Su Luo's complexion was calm and collected without a single ripple. Her eyes turned back to gaze at Nangong Luyin. Nangong Luyin shot a faint glance at Bei Chening. Not batting an eyelid, he said. Since there is a person whose flood of good fortune fills the heavens, naturally, there is a person whose luck is bad through and through. Maybe he is buried beneath the ocean floor, who knows? Bei Chening was immediately speechless. Daring to speak this way about Li Outyan, very likely, there was only Nangong, this individual. If other people dared to speak this way, the Li family would have already pounced on them and beaten them up. Su Luo spread out both hands and helplessly shrugged her shoulders. At that time, the Amethyst Fish Palace was about to disappear. Everyone looked after their own lives to escape. Taking care of themselves was good enough. Who had the ability to care about others? Bei Chening was being swayed by Nangong and Su Luo, these 2 big liars whose eyes didn't even blink. Immediately, he felt that what they said was reasonable and nodded in approval. Precisely, everyone is responsible for their own life. Whether Li Outyan is alive or dead has nothing to do with us. Nangong Luyin had an expression as if teaching a child, and nodded his head. These matters you needn't care too much about. Bei Chening smiled bitterly. I also don't want to care about it, however, since Li Outyan disappeared. The Li family sent Li Yaoxiang over this time. It's not like you don't know that person's temperament, right? Li Yaoxiang, within the Li family's 2nd generation. He was only second to Li Outyan's father's existence, at the peak of 8th rank in strength. His behavior was extremely haughty, arrogant and narrow-minded. He was also the most likely to cover up the Li family's mistakes. Chapter 498, Life and Death Duel 5. When Bei Chening mentioned Li Yaoxiang, Nangong Luyin merely frowned slightly and didn't give more of a response. Seeing Su Luo, Bei Chening was the happiest. But before he could express his excitement, he was directly assigned a new task by Nangong Luyin. What? Send forces to suppress pirates? And it is the dragon gang of the Eastern Sea? Bei Qining continued to shake his head. No way, no way. Those guys appear like the gods and vanish like the devils. Only heaven knows which corner they are hiding in. By the time the armed forces appear, they have already fled and vanished without a trace earlier. Su Luo's eyes were bent like a half-moon, as she smilingly said. This time, with Nangong Luoyan taking action, then I don't believe it will be that troublesome. Second brother, you want to undertake this task? Momentarily, Bei Qinying's eyes gave off a bright light, having a looking forward to it expression. Not undertaking the task, rather, it's better to say have already taken action. Nangong Luoyan tossed him a jade piece. Now go. Once he heard these words, Bei Qining was immediately all smiles. The dragon gang of the Eastern Sea had never been raised even once by the imperial court. The riches it had hoarded, one could only imagine. Normally, where they would withdraw to was unknown, so it was fine. But now, since they had Nangong Luoyan participating, naturally, it would be an instant win. Bei Qining put away the jade piece carefully, smiling toward Su Luo until you could only see the eyebrows and not the eye, revealed a mouthful of snow-white teeth. Sister-in-law should feel assured, if there are good stuff, I certainly will save it for you. I'll wait until you return from an immediate victory to split the booty. That's naturally good. Su Luo smilingly said to him. The fastest way to accumulate wealth was not to earn it, but rather to plunder for it. The dragon gang of the Eastern Sea had run amok and was feared for many years on the Eastern Sea, and was never raised once by the imperial court. One could well imagine its wealth. Su Luo nearly salivated just thinking about it. Don't blame her for being short-sighted. It was actually because she needed to activate that formation to get out, and after paying the expensive cost, she really was so poor as to not even have clanking sounds in her pockets. Nangong Luoyan smilingly rubbed her head, with a tender voice, saying, Let's go. There were sufficient armed soldiers on the luxurious yacht. Nangong Luoyan handed all of them over to Bei Qining, whereas he personally brought Su Luo over to a smaller, independent yacht stored in the hold of the luxurious yacht. He brought Su Luo on the journey home, rushing headlong back. Eastern Ling Imperial Capital. Today the streets were much livelier than previous days. One after another, a crowd of people flocked to the largest fighting stadium in the middle of the city. The second miss and fourth miss from the great General Su's residence was about to conduct a life-and-death duel. Moreover, it was going to be today. This kind of news was like injecting a dose of fresh blood into the ordinary, boring lives of the people in the capital. This suddenly made a lot of people impassioned. Everyone continuously guessed. In the end, just what kind of hatred was there that would make two sisters have this kind of falling out? There were people who favored Su Qing, and would proclaim the argument that the poisonous Su Luo seduced Su Qing's one true love. You guys are really too ill-informed and narrow-minded. Not even knowing this? That Su Luo is a vixen. I heard she even seduced her own older sister's future husband. That's right. She is still a girl birthed by a concubine. Normally, she is also a good-for-nothing waste. She has no honor or shame. To actually go seduce her older sister's future husband. She simply doesn't have any self-awareness, too shameless. Right, otherwise, how could Su Qing, in a fit of fury, raise the matter of a life-and-death duel? It was because she was completely infuriated. If I were to have this kind of younger sister, I would choke her to death at the earliest opportunity and be done with it, to avoid being set up by her in the future. These irresponsible rumors spread faster than the speed of wind. Very quickly, everyone in the city knew about it. But it was also not everyone would follow the opinion of the majority. There were some clear-headed people. Too laughable, since Su Luo herself is a love-struck fool and a good-for-nothing waste. Then how could she seduce her older sister's in name only, future husband? Is that older sister's future husband a blind person? Since he is blind, then how could Su Qing's kind of ice beauty even be interested? Chapter 499, Life and Death Duel 6. No matter how you say it, they are always talking about the future brother-in-law. In the end, who is that man? Having the ability to make Su Qing fall for him. He shouldn't be an ordinary person. I heard it was His Highness Prince Jean. That is even more hilarious. Su Qing prostrating herself before His Highness Prince Jin. This I believe, but how could His Highness Prince Jin possibly fancy Su Qing? Isn't that just nonsense? Precisely. There are even more outrageous sayings. There have even been rumors that the good-for-nothing trash Su Luo from the Su family snatched His Highness Prince Jin from Su Qing's hands. I am dying from laughter. Let's not mention the good-for-nothing Su Luo, even Su Qing herself. What qualifications does she have to be fancied by His Highness Prince Jin? Even going so far as boasting that His Highness Prince Jin is her true love? Who the hell does she think she is? The above-mentioned were actually from the anti-Su Qing camp. Due to the controversy, there were many people who paid close attention to the duel as a result. As a result of one round after another of hype, today's duel to the death had simply reached the extent where it was bursting with activity with a turnout that included the entire capital. The imperial capital had an enormous fighting stadium sufficient to accommodate 100,000 people. There were many areas on the fighting stage, but in the most central area there now stood a female in a blazing red skirt. One could see she had an exquisite and extremely beautiful appearance with a complexion as clear and cold as a lotus. With her standing on stage, even her surroundings appeared to have been cooled down by a few degrees. Su Qing stood on stage, so she heard the comments from the audience below. In the beginning, the public opinion was favorable towards her, with many criticizing Su Luo. She listened with a calm and collected complexion. Not a single ripple disturbed Su Qing's expression, but her heart was delighted from beginning to end. However, she didn't know since when the direction of public opinion started to gradually change. A few opinions unfavorable towards her started to appear, mostly mocking her wishful thinking with regards to His Highness Prince Jin. This was precisely the sharpest thorn buried deepest in Su Qing's heart. Having it pointed out and laid bare by people like this made her suffer more pain than simply just killing her. Standing on top of the really high and enormous fighting stage, Su Qing clenched both her hands into fists. Her complexion condensed into a cold and arrogant expression. She continuously mouthing Su Luo's name in her heart, accompanied by the sinister hatred in her eyes. Time gradually passed, but Su Luo still hadn't arrived. The spectators under the stage who wanted to see a good play immediately become unhappy. One after another, they yelled at the top of their throats. What's going on? Wasn't it said there will be a duel to the death? It's almost time. Where is the other person? Exactly. We had to arrive early in the morning in order to grab good seats. Do you think it was easy? Are they playing with us? Don't tell me Su Luo became scared at the last moment and did not dare to come. Huh? Hey, this is really too embarrassing, right? If she was afraid, then she shouldn't have agreed. Since she has agreed, she shouldn't be afraid. The character of Su Manor's fourth miss is too lacking, right? No wonder she could do something nauseating like stealing her older sister's future husband. Everyone in the audience were discussing this spiritedly, but Lan Xian was so anxious his forehead started to give off sweat. Beichen and Anya were searching for them on the ocean, but his luck wasn't as good. His assignment was to reverse the direction of the public opinion, to create a fair, auspicious, and peaceful environment in the battle arena for sister-in-law. His suppression of Su Qing's stratagems had just started to show some results. Nevertheless, who could have imagined that the time for the duel was quickly approaching? Yet sister-in-law still had not arrived. Public opinion was a small matter, but sister-in-law's safety was a major concern. If she had truly met with mishap, very likely a huge problem had occurred on Nangong's side. Lan Xian irritability pulled at his hair. He somewhat worriedly stood up to look in all directions. Young master, do we still continue? Lan Su, Lan Xian's loyal and devoted subordinate, respectfully bowed and asked. Lan Xian recalled Anya Ming's instruction from that day. It did not matter if sister-in-law showed up or not, he must continue to reverse the public opinion for her. Recalling up to that point, Lan Xian twitchily waved his hand. Continue. Chapter 500, Life and Death Duel 7. The time for the decisive battle drew nearer by minutes and seconds. But what nobody could imagine was that even now, Su Luo still hadn't arrived yet. On the fighting stage, the corner of Su Qing's mouth hooked up slightly, tilting up into a ridiculing sneer. Suluo, are you afraid? Afraid to come, right? Being like this, how are you fit to be with His Highness Prince Jean? Why would he be so good to you? You don't deserve it. Don't deserve it. Su Qing's deep, cold eyes dropped down slightly as she stood on the marble fighting stage made up of huge boulders, unmoving and silently laughing in her heart. If Su Luo didn't show up, not only did it imply that she was a coward, but at the same time, her name would be on the most wanted list in the mainland. Then, from this day forth, she would never have a peaceful day. Everyone on the mainland worshipped the strong, and would always look down upon cowards for a lifetime. Therefore, there was a rule: not daring to attend your life and death duel. Your name would immediately be placed on the list of most wanted with a very high reward money offered. Also, everyone would kill her. Therefore, Su Luo, today, you appearing is death, not appearing is also death. Su Qing's cold eyes hung down, a sinister and cruel radiance flashing through them. Meanwhile, in a private room on the second floor of the fighting arena, the door was closed tightly. An extremely beautiful woman that was above the common people sat upright like a queen. Her pair of eyes unblinkingly stared at the empty fighting stage below with an enigmatic expression. Nobody could see clearly what she was thinking about. A screened hat was placed quietly at her right-hand side. This screened hat could only cover half of a person. It was just like her expression, pitch black as ink. The audience under the stage was spiritedly discussing away, regardless of how Lan Xian's people tried to pacify the rowdy crowd. But without Su Luo's appearance, these people felt as if they were being fooled. Immediately, they were angry against a common enemy and unprecedentedly united as one. Lan Xian pressed down on his temple that was throbbing nonstop. He bitterly smiled inside his heart. If at this moment, sister-in-law is again unwell, maybe this matter would not end well. There is still the final 3 minutes left, but our other duelist has not appeared at all. The judges walked onto the fighting stage with eyes gazing off in the distance in all 4 directions, indifferently saying, as everyone knows, no matter what kind of reason, after signing a life and death contract and not going on to the life and death stage, from now on, she will inevitably suffer attacks from the experts of the entire continent. The judge paused and another minute passed. The final 2 minutes. In the wake of the judge's words, immediately, all the tongues of the people at the scene started to wag. Not true, right? That Miss Su really doesn't dare to come? Precisely, she actually turned out to be a coward. Originally, I heard that this miss on the surface was a good-for-nothing, but had actually hidden her strength under a bushel to secretly cultivate. I thought she was going to be a great person, never expected this. That's right, originally, I also thought highly of and supported this Su Luo. I just wanted to see the play of a concubine daughter's counterattack. Who would have imagined that she simply won't dare to even appear? The judge's indifferent voice once again echoed out. The last minute. Momentarily, everyone settled down. With rapt attention, they held their breath, unmoving and waiting for the arrival of the last second. Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Nobody ever felt until now how very slowly the time could pass. It was so slow as if the entire world had stopped rotating around. 10, 9, 8, 7. Now everyone was all counting down in their hearts, with their hearts full of all kinds of stirred-up moods. In the wake of the sound of the audience counting down the time. In the private room on the second floor, this exceedingly refined, extremely beautiful woman's mouth slowly hooked up into a smiling expression. Her smile was beautiful like a blooming summer flower. The sneer at the corner of her mouth became increasingly distinct. Su Luo, never imagined defeating you this easily, really doesn't give a person a feeling of accomplishment. But very quickly, the smile, in a flash, became rigid at the corner of her mouth. Her entire person seemed to have all the acupuncture points pushed to a stop, back so stiff that she almost couldn't budge. Chapter 501 Life and Death Duel 8. They could see to the distant horizon. It was vast without boundary. The azure horizon seemed to send out dazzling rays of light. Just at this moment, 2 small, black dots suddenly appeared at a distant place in the sky. Soon after, the small black dots grew larger and larger, until you were ultimately able to vaguely distinguish the figures of 2 individual. The 2 individual shadows came, appearing to tread on the waves. The man's sleeves danced lightly, outstanding and extraordinary. The woman's skirt flew upwards, with jade bones and an immortal beauty. One was handsome like this, one was fresh, clean and clever. The two people were holding each other's hands firmly, treading on air, like immortals arriving surrounded in a faint mist. This was absolutely, that everyone had ever seen in their whole lives. The most well-matched, most perfect couple, like a pair of jade annulus that made their hearts beat with eagerness. At present, everyone was looking up, foolishly gazing at the two extremely beautiful figures that arrived from far away. Slowly, Nangong Luyun was holding Su Luo's hand while leading her, flying fast as they gently floated down onto the enormous fighting stage. With a casual wave of his hand, those tide-like voices of the audience counting backward immediately stopped. It was as if the entire world, at this moment, completely stopped. Everyone held their breath with rapt attention, quietly watching that unique and matchless juvenile on stage, just like facing the ruler of all under heaven. Now within this giant fighting arena, sat a full house of 100,000 people or more. They were all like the woman sitting in the second-floor private room. Their whole body was stiff like iron, unwaveringly staring at that handsome, bright and extraordinary man on the stage. Jin, His Highness Prince Jin? How was this possible? This was irrational. How could His Highness Prince Jin appear on the stage of the fighting arena? Moreover, he actually appeared holding hands with a woman? What did this show? Immediately, everyone in the audience was emotionally stirred up. Madness. Riots. Look. That is His Highness Prince Jin. It really is His Highness Prince Jin. This woman in the prime of her youth was so excited that she nearly collapsed. How is this possible? Why would His Highness Prince Jin even come here? Isn't this a duel between the two misses from the Su Manor? Why would he come? Don't tell me the rumors are true. The two misses from the Su Manor are truly dueling over His Highness Prince Jin? Who is that girl His Highness Prince Jin is holding hands with? Why would His Highness hold her hand like this? For what reason? The countless women were emotionally stirred up. They were shouting, jealous and frantic. Those sounds of their shouts were practically howls tearing from their throats, nearly boiling over the entire fighting arena. A stream of gazes that harbored malicious intentions shot towards Su Luo, and exploded onto her body. Even if Su Luo's manner remained unperturbed like the wind, it was also inevitable that she would have some difficulty holding on to her calm. She tried to throw him off slightly, but Nangong Liuyun's hand was like an iron clamp that held on firmly, motionlessly clenching hers, not allowing her to escape. Nangong Luyun gazed at the rioting audience, and frowned faintly. He lifted his right hand up, and pressed down slightly. Immediately, the impassioned audience, like the boiling water in a pot, suddenly became absolutely silent, terrifyingly quiet. Seeing this, those several big shots that were invited to be judges, one after another, forced a bitter smile and shook their heads. The law-enforcing elder of the Imperial Capital's elder group, the venerable president of the Imperial Capital's #1 school, the honorary elder of the Mercenary Union. These important figures, with a mere stamp of their feet, could shake the entire Imperial Capital 3 times. They could only exchange a bitter smile with each other. Regarding martial arts cultivation, Nangong Luyun was not necessarily their opponent. However, regarding his power to control the arena, the three of them added together would also fall short of his influence that was shown just by raising his hand. Nangong Luyun looked at the spread of flushed faces in the audience, those shining, twinkling eyes. The space between his eyebrows knitted slightly. He turned to the judges. His voice was indifferent, negligent and cold. "Can we start?" The judges were frightened by Nangong Liuyun's gaze. For a moment, they couldn't respond. Su Luo pursed her lips into a smile as she gave them direction with good intentions. "Excuse me, may I ask if the fight can begin now?" Without waiting for the judges to respond, Su Qing condescendingly lifted the corner of her mouth. "Su Luo, you arrived too late." Su Luo was all smiles as she sized up Su Qing in front of her. Haven't seen her for many days. Compared to before, Su Qing's temperament had unexpectedly changed somewhat. Chapter 502 Life and Death Agreement 1. Su Luo shot her an indifferent glance, with a clear and cold tone that was light as wind said. Am I late? Su Qing's face was cold with a grim laugh. Yes. You are late, therefore you already lost. I won't kill you, you should commit suicide. Not waiting for Su Luo's response, Nangong Luoyun swept Su Qing a sharp glance. That look terrified her heart. Only then did he turn his eyes towards the audience. With a cold as ice tone unhurriedly said, Did any of you see the fourth Miss Su being late? No. Everybody said in a unified voice that resounded high into the clouds with strength that pierced through the heavens. Absolutely wouldn't allow any other comments. Nangong Luoyun glanced back with a smile, yet not a smile expression in his eyes, containing a trace of a hidden sneer. He raised an eyebrow and cast a sidelong glance at Su Qing. Hear that? Su Qing's pupils flashed with a trace of maliciousness. His Highness Prince Jin was obviously being biased. No matter who it was, they could clearly tell. However, Su Qing did not have the courage to criticize him. Because in this imperial capital, no one has the courage to provoke His Highness Prince Jin. With deep apathy and a trace of cynicism, Nangong Luoyun's gaze landed light as a feather on Su Qing's face. Then he looked back to Su Luo and intimately rubbed her head with his generously large and heated hands. Have fun playing, this king will wait for you below. Have fun playing? Su Qing's eyes opened wide in a flash. They became red as blood, firmly glaring at Su Luo while her hands clenched into tight fists at her side. This was a life and death duel between her and Su Luo, yet His Highness Prince Jin actually told Su Luo to have fun playing? How could he look down at her so much? Su Qing was so infuriated that she almost spat out blood. On the second floor in a private room, that exceedingly refined beauty's pair of eyes were treacherously and maliciously glaring at Su Luo, like a viper alongside her waiting for an opportunity to bite her at any time. Because of jealousy, her originally beautiful appearance was now extremely distort, appearing ugly and malevolent. Everyone below the stage were quiet. So quiet that it was frightening. Nobody would have imagined that it was actually His Highness Prince Jin who led Su Luo over by the hand. Also, no one would have thought that the person with extremely disdainful manner would become a love-struck idiot. And nobody would have ever thought that His Highness Prince Jin would be this intimate with her. At this moment, they were speechless, especially those young women who worship His Highness Prince Jin as a revered god. It was as if they were scorched by lightning and split in two, like wilted eggplant with foolishly blank expressions still sitting in the same place, not knowing how to respond. On the stage, only complete quietness among the three judges. The honorary president of the Mercenary Union gave a clear cough while stroking his few strands of goat-like beard. Since both parties are here, then let's start the match. When this elderly man with kind brows and pleasant eyes looked at Su Luo, his eyes flashed with an interested radiance. Bei Chen Mu, Bei Chen Ying's third granduncle, is the honorary president of the Mercenary Union. Bei Chenying was known to the outside as the president of the Mercenary Union, but because he was still young, he was under tutelage of this elder. Bei Chenying could be said to hold the power of the Mercenary Union, but you might as well say this elder was the true master behind the scenes. In this life and death duel, don't know who was able to invited this elder to come. That person's reputation must be very big. Su Luo saw him, spoke smiling while quietly looked at her. Her heart couldn't help but cough once. Could this elder be invited by Bei Chenying? However, she doesn't have time to think too much, because now under the eyes of many the scent of battle permeated through the air. Su Qing icily and arrogantly cast sidelong glances at Su Luo. The corners of her mouth rose up into a cold taunting smile. Ha, didn't arrive too late? Very good. Since you have chosen the painful way to die, then as your older sister I will help you accomplish it. Su Luo gave a shallow smile, with a calm complexion said. Su Qing, speak the truth, when have I ever offended you? Why do you hate me so much? Su Qing's eyes lit up with furious intent. Speak less nonsense. Chapter 503. The Life and Death Agreement 2. But because Su Luo wanted to incite Su Qing into a rage out of humiliation, she wouldn't easily let this opportunity slip by. Su Luo carelessly asked. Don't tell me it really is because of Nangong Luoyun? But he has simply never even looked at you. He still doesn't even know who you are. What qualifications do you have to be jealous? Su Luo's words were unhurried and leisurely, but as far as Su Qing was concerned, every word weighted greater than 500 kilograms full of strength, seriously wounding her. Su Luo, I demand you shut up. Su Luo's words had hit right on the mark of her most shameful and depressing matter. Immediately, Su Qing's eyes became scarlet red, giving off red rays of light. Her complexion flushed crimson. Don't tell me it's not like that? Obviously, it was you yourself who showered affections on an uninterested party, and wishfully thought that His Highness Prince Jean was interested in you. Finally, you found out it was all a misunderstanding, was made fun of and mocked. So you vented all your anger onto me. Do you dare to deny this in front of everyone present? Su Luo's deep eyes rose up slightly and looked at her with a ghost of a smile. Her words, her meaningful gaze, all carried an endless amount of mockery. No matter how icily arrogant and nobly aloof Su Qing might appear, she was still stirred up to the brink of madness by a few sentences from Su Luo. However, it seemed Su Luo felt it was still not enough, and she unhurriedly said, Su Qing, you forced me to draw up the life and death agreement. At that time you were 4th rank. I was only 3rd rank, ha ha ha. Fancy that you could even open your mouth to demand this. Whoosh, the audience under the stage seemed to have woken up from a dream. Each and every one of them had their ears pointed up, listening excitedly and watching with great delight at the version of siblings mutually destroying each other in front of their eyes. Every one of Su Luo's sentence pressed in, and Su Qing was completely unable to deny it. The truth. So this was the real truth of the matter. So as it turned out, Su Qing had believed herself to be infallible, and through her wishful thinking, thought the one His Highness Prince Jean fell in love with was her. As it turned out, when Su Qing found out the truth, she flew into a rage out of humiliation, and vented her anger onto her younger sister's body. So it was Su Qing who forced her own younger sister, whose age and cultivation was below hers, to set up a life and death agreement. Su Qing, such a nobly proud, aloof, cold beauty, originally thought nobody would enter her eye, but as it turned out, that icily arrogant appearance was all a pretense. This kind of Su Qing was too fake. Now a countless number of gazes were focused like the light of a lamp, converging on Su Qing's body. The gazes of a lot of people on Su Qing carried a strong, despising expression. Before, how many were fond of her? There was just as many who looked down upon her now. Under thousands of staring eyes, Su Qing's face, in an instant, blushed a deep red. The hands at her side could not suppress the slight trembling. Clearly, she was already at the peak of her fury. Su Luo indifferently and without affection looked at her, the corner of her mouth hooked up slightly. Su Qing, at that time when you forced me to set up the life and death agreement, you would never have thought that today I would reveal everything and use it to very ruthlessly slap your face? That's right, the you who was always standing in the clouds, the you who always regarded me as an ant. How could you have foreseen this point? But very quickly, you would know that even an ant could counterattack against an elephant. Meanwhile, you were destined to be defeated by my hands. Now Su Qing's complexion was extremely ugly, suddenly white, then green, then red, like a dish of blended colors, with many colors jumping out. Su Luo, since you want to court death, then I will help you accomplish this. A murderous intent flashed through Su Qing's cold eyes. A life and death duel. Every life and death is fated through the mandate of heaven, and private vendettas must not be carried out afterwards. The judge stood in the center of the stage, his ice-cold gaze sweeping towards Su Qing and Su Luo. Today's fight is between Su Manor's Su Qing and Su Luo. The two people, please make your preparations. Seeing Su Qing and Su Luo both nodding their heads, the judge mildly said, since both sides have already finished their preparations, then the fight will begin from now. Not waiting for the judge's words to fade, Su Qing gave a sinisterly fierce smile, taking quick steps to stride over as unsophisticated spirit force burst forth from her body and rushed out. A powerful deterrent force spread out from her entire body. An inexhaustible spirit force, in a split second, surged violently towards Su Luo like a tide. 5th rank. Chapter 504. The Life and Death Agreement 3. Su Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, her heart moved a tiny bit, but her expression remained calm and collected. At that time when the crown prince ridiculed her, he blurted out that Su Qing teacher's sect, in order to help her become victorious in the fight, gave her various rare kinds of treasure as if it was water, forcing her promotion to the 5th rank. Now it looks like what the crown prince said was not false. Whether it was Su Qing's cultivation or fighting experience, both were richer than Su Luo's, and one moment of inattentiveness would result in a lethal injury. Su Luo's complexion was somewhat grave as she stared at Su Qing with indifference. In the beginning, Su Qing was so angered by Su Luo that she flew into a rage out of humiliation, nearly exploding. But during the time it took to start the life and death duel, she concealed her anger, leaving no trace behind. She replaced it with an overcast, fiendish and murderous aura. Su Luo's heart secretly was somewhat regretful. Just now, she deliberately set out to infuriate Su Qing. The main purpose was to rile up her qi and blood, to disquiet her state of mind. But she didn't expect that Su Qing would calm down so quickly. It seemed that Su Qing being able to achieve her present position of prestige was not merely based on the pursuit of popularity. She really had the ability and was made of good material. Beheading chop of the netherworld. A bright white light, like a sharp blade, launched toward Su Luo's throat. This sword strike seemed ordinary, but only Su Luo knew that its approach was brimming with a severe, ruthless danger. Bang! Su Luo condensed out an enormous great-dimensional imprint which smashed heavily towards that sword. Both sides collided, producing an ear-splitting noise. Su Luo immediately took a step back due to the recoil, unloading the pressure produced by the strike. Su Luo's heart trembled slightly with apprehension. The strength of a 5th rank was not someone she, who was at the middle of 4th rank, could compare to and underestimate. Just based on the weight of the power alone, it was stronger than hers by at least 1-fold. Moreover, Su Qing's sword was obviously not a common sword. When she came into contact with it, she could clearly feel an icy cold penetrate through her back. In terms of spirit power, Su Luo knew she couldn't risk her life and directly attack Su Qing. She had cultivated the spirit dance steps, so she was an expert in speed. Her previous life's experience made her an expert assassin. Therefore, she shouldn't go all out in a direct fight against Su Qing. She could only outsmart her. Thinking up to here, a beam of light flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Soon after, she turned around and ran. Her foot tread the exquisite spirit dance steps as the corner of her skirt danced. Her speed was so fast that she only left an afterimage. In a split second, she had run until all traces of her disappeared. Su Qing's heart was furious. Want to run? You think you are able to run away today? Humph. Su Qing disdainfully gave a snort. She chased tightly after Su Luo, unwilling to let go, aggressively and seething with the desire to commit murder. The netherworld sword in Su Qing's hand suddenly thrusted towards Su Luo's back. However, Su Luo was like a mudfish slipping through her hand, slipping away at the most critical moment. It was nothing if it was only once or twice, but it was often, and every time, it was like this. This made Su Qing's state of mind that she had calmed down with great difficulty once again explode with her fiery anger. The two misses on the stage, one was running, the other was pursuing. The one escaping was surrounded by perils. The one chasing was furious and utterly discomfited. Their speed was extremely fast, one after another. A stream of afterimages flew past, unable to even see their silhouettes. Everyone underneath the stage held their breath with rapt attention, nervously and tensely staring at the stage. All of their attention was attracted by what's happening, afraid of, in a flash, missing a thread of a brilliant event. Today's fight was really wonderful and stimulating. Moreover, it was a fight between sisters from the same manner, giving it an even more interesting quality. So everyone was all stirred up and excited from watching. Of course, there were also some people who were unhappy with Su Luo's performance. Even though Su Luo runs very fast, and also looks good running, but always running is not a good method. I was under the impression that Su Luo dared to agree to this life and death duel, because she had an amazing hidden card. As it turns out, she only knows to flee for her life. Just fleeing and not counterattacking, sooner or later, she will lose. No suspense. Originally, there was no suspense. Su Qing is exceptionally gifted and from a famous sect. She is bound to win this fight, not in the least suspenseful. Chapter 505, Life and Death Agreement 4. Below the stage, everyone was in the midst of animated discussion. However, every sentence was filled with certainty that Su Qing would be the victor. Aside from Nangong Luyan, there was probably not one person who was optimistic about Su Luo's chances. The current situation had changed to favoring one side, toward Su Qing. Su Luo heard the noisy discussion below the stage. A light smile flashed across the corner of her mouth. She was not affected in the slightest way by these voices. In contrast, when Su Qing heard these voices, a trace of arrogance appeared in her heart. Even though His Highness Prince Jin supported Su Luo, so what? Based on innate talent and strength, how could Su Luo even be compared to her? Everyone below were all supporting her. Su Qing's gaze seemed to land on His Highness Prince Jin countless times. She wanted to know whether or not he now regretted choosing Su Luo. Just when Su Qing was glancing at His Highness Prince Jin, all of a sudden, His Highness Prince Jin directed a perfect smile at her. It was a demonically enchanting and alluring smile that could charm all living things. It simply captured a person's spirit and soul, turning them upside down. Su Qing's movements momentarily stopped. Because she wanted to provoke Su Qing, Su Luo continuously observed Su Qing's mental strength. Su Luo watched as Su Qing became entranced by that smile of Nangong Liuyun's to the point of being almost incapable of returning to her senses. Suddenly, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a smiling expression. Weakness. Finally found a weakness in Su Qing's defense. His Highness Prince Jin's male honey trap was very successful, so cleverly done. When experts exchange blows, in an instant, a myriad of changes could occur. Su Qing, you dared to be distracted at this moment. You really have great belief in yourself. No sooner said than done. A dense blackish handprint suddenly appeared above Su Qing's head. Bang! A great dimensional imprint ruthlessly smashed straight down on Su Qing's forehead. Su Qing truly deserved to be called a fifth-rank expert. At the moment when the great dimensional imprint was about to smash down, she had already returned to her senses. It was just that due to fright, Su Qing subconsciously rolled to the right. However, for Su Luo, who had already become well versed in Su Qing's fighting habits, how could she let Su Qing escape so easily? Flaming Spring. Su Luo's voice exploded out loudly. At the place where Su Qing was tumbling, a sea of flames that was as big as a spring ignited rose up from the ground. The fire rolled like waves. Su Qing was momentarily distracted. She had been manipulated by Su Luo to become so flustered that she didn't know what to do with her hands and feet. Her body fell into the sea of flames. The pain immediately caused tears to fall as she uttered a shriek. Su Luo's fire was taken from the cave of flames, which burned much hotter when compared to normal flames. Therefore, in the moment it takes to breathe, Su Qing's hair was lit up. The flames rushed like a torrent, giving her no time to deal with it. Normally Su Qing would cultivate a lot, but with regards to real fighting experience she didn't have enough. Thus, when she was manipulated by Su Luo into a state of confusion, she suddenly lost her normally clear, cold and proud manner. Ice Seal Art. With great difficulty Su Qing recovered her senses and loudly shouted. An ice seal quickly blasted towards herself. Su Qing was of the ice elemental system, so she subconsciously froze a layer of ice on her own head. As expected, in a split second, above her ignited hair a whistling sound could be heard. In a flash, the fire was extinguished. However, without waiting for Su Qing to completely recover, a light shadow quietly appeared behind her. A deeply cold and sharp dagger sliced severely towards her neck. Su Qing's ice covered from her head down to her mouth, but her neck was exposed, to the extent of giving Su Luo a chance to take advantage of it. A blood-curdling screech could be heard. A scarlet line of blood had been cut into Su Qing's neck. A bright red line of blood streaked across the air. However, Su Luo didn't seem to be satisfied with her own performance. She rapidly retreated with some regret. Even though she had succeeded, but Su Qing's reaction was also not slow. At the critical juncture, Su Qing had erected a sharp armor of ice on her throat. Su Luo's dagger had only slashed a line of blood on Su Qing's throat, and was unable to advance even half an inch further. Failing to eliminate Su Qing, following this, Su Luo would have to suffer Su Qing's wrath and frantic retaliation. Chapter 506, Life and Death Agreement 5. The strike did not hit its mark, so Su Luo quickly retreated. After all, a crazy Su Qing was not someone she could provoke too much. Now, everyone present was silent. The surroundings were awfully quiet. Nobody in the audience under the stage could have anticipated that just a moment ago, Su Luo almost killed Su Qing. This simply was. Everyone felt as if their own neck was somewhat cold. That slice just now, from Su Luo condensing out the palm print to the fire attack, then to assassinating with a dagger, seemed to take a long time. In fact, it occurred between the time it took for a spark to light up on a flint. The action happened in a blink of an eye. Now Su Luo stood calmly on one side of the fighting arena, the gentle wind blowing her ink-colored hair, the corner of her skirt flying upwards. It was as if her entire body was giving off a brilliant radiance, giving one an illusion of her having an extraordinary manner. In contrast to Su Qing, originally, she was like a lotus in fresh water, noble, virtuous and proud, but after merely a short time's effort, she was actually forced by Su Luo into such a sorry state. That head of silky, supple and black hair was burned until only a few sparse amounts remained. On her snow-white, jade-like neck, there was a sinister bloody line. The clothing on her body was soiled with bloodstains. Now she cut an extremely sorry figure. How could this be? Clearly, Su Qing was 5th rank, so obviously, she should have been the stronger one. Why was she forced to this extent? Without exception, on top of everyone's head appeared a huge question mark, extremely perplexing to them. Currently, Su Qing was simply itching to execute Su Luo through 1,000 cuts. Trap of a beautiful male. How could His Highness Prince Jean? How could he use the honey trap against her? If it weren't for her being distracted from looking at him, then how could Su Luo take advantage of this opportunity? Really too abominable. Su Qing fumed with rage, stressing each syllable as she furiously shouted, Su Luo, if you have the ability, then you should rely on your own skill to beat me. Don't use those underhanded tricks. Underhanded tricks? Dare I ask, second older sister, what kind of underhanded tricks? Su Luo stood unperturbed, casting sidelong glances at her with a smile that was not quite a smile. Losing her mind with one smile from Nangong Luyan, Su Qing, you should say it out loud, allowing everyone to judge the right and wrong of this. Su Qing was immediately choked off by this. A raging flame seemed to have ignited in her chest. Both of her eyes were scarlet red like blood. She was clearly extremely furious. How could she say it? How could she publicly say that she lost her senses from a smile by Nangong Luyan? If it was like this, how was she different from a love-struck fool? Su Luo was openly conspiring against her, and Su Qing was unable to retort back. She could only fly into a rage from humiliation. She shouted loudly, Su Luo, give me your life. Her words hadn't completely faded, before her body had already launched towards Su Luo like a meteor. Ice Blades Technique. Su Qing yelled out loud. One after another, icy blades formed with 5 edges started spinning and shot towards the front of Su Luo's body. The icy blades were densely packed together, hiding the sky and covering the earth. There were at least hundreds and thousands of sheets of ice. If she was pierced by it, Su Luo would instantly turn into a hedgehog. This was Su Qing throwing caution to the wind. She was so enraged as to enter the crazy state. Now the corner of Su Luo's mouth was lifted in a grim smile. Frankly, in her previous incarnation, she must really have deep enmity with ice mages. The archenemies in this lifetime unexpectedly all used Ice Blades technique to kill her. From the beginning with Lu Chengfeng to the recently out Yen, and now to this Su Qing in front of her, they were actually all ice departments. However, the most recent few battles also allowed Su Luo to fight with ice element mages, giving her a lot of experience. The great dimensional imprint formed up high. Afterwards, it changed into a dark shadow and rapidly enveloping Su Luo, forming a protective membrane around Su Luo's surroundings, completely protecting her entire body without a single leak. Thump, 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 one after another, ice blades attacked the protective membrane, issuing intense striking sounds. Momentarily, star-like sparks radiated all around. It was exceptionally dazzling. Chapter 507, Life and Death Agreement 6. However, without a doubt, all of the ice blades were warded off by Su Luo. The protective cover was removed, and Su Luo indifferently shot Su Qing a glance. Still think your attacks are formidable. Looks like you are also only at this level. Being looked down by Su Luo made Su Qing extremely furious, and a malevolent sneer flashed across her face. Just now was merely the starter, now this is the real main course. She had just finished speaking, when one could see her hands flip over and immediately, spirit force burst out explosively. Her hands formed many complicated seals, afterwards condensing out a countless number of handprints attacking towards Su Luo. A countless number of shadowy fists mixed together with an icy cold air enveloping towards Su Luo. Among these shadowy fists, Su Luo felt her heart being apprehensive. It was as if a viper was concealed among the crowd, and at any time would pounce on her to strike a fatal blow on her. Su Luo immediately realized most of these shadowy fists were fake tricks, only one among them was the real killing move. Since this was Su Qing's most powerful killing move, if she was unable to guard against it, today, what awaited her would inevitably be a crushing defeat. Su Luo sucked in a deep breath and concentrated all of her mental strength. Her pair of eyes was as clear as water as they unwaveringly stared at those rapidly attacking shadowy fists. It was silent in the surroundings, so quiet. It was as if between heaven and earth, she was the only one remaining. Finally, Su Luo slowly closed both of her eyes. Unexpectedly. Why would she close both of her eyes at this critical juncture? Wasn't this the tempo of voluntarily courting death? All the spectators under the stage were staring at Su Luo in stunned surprise. Without exception, they felt she was insane. His Highness Prince Jin was sitting in the most center and respected position in the first row, and his hands tightened slightly. His gaze was like a torch shining radiantly as he watched Su Luo fixedly. He knew, if at this moment Su Luo was able to comprehend it, then her mental strength would certainly advance by leaps and bounds. If she couldn't comprehend it, what awaited her was an endless stream of injuries. In Nangong Liuyun's mind, the image of Su Luo smiling with a flowery dimple from days ago appeared. She was looking at him, earnestly and gravely asking him, "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" Nangong Liuyun's tense hands were clenched into fists, right in the middle of hesitating. Suddenly, from Su Luo's own body, a stream of mental powers emitted out in wave-like motions. Nangong Liyun smiled in satisfaction and adjusted his body's position, allowing himself to sit more comfortably. But his gaze was still as sharp as he unblinkingly looked upon the stage. Now, the smile on Su Qing's face had already blossomed, like the goddess of victory, contemptuously looking at the ant in front of her. "Su Luo, you are about to die. You are finally about to die. If this world doesn't have you, how beautiful will it be?" Su Qing was already imagining her blissful life afterwards. But, very quickly, the smiling expression stiffened at the corner of her mouth. In the split second when the shadowy fists were about to reach Su Luo's forehead, Su Luo's tightly closed eyes abruptly flipped open. That pair of eyes which was as deep as water burned radiantly, like the vast body of seawater, deep, profoundly mysterious and ink-black. It was also like the unsheathed, double-edged sword, showing off one's ability. One could only see the corner of Su Luo's mouth hook into a negligent, cold smile. Sure enough, the desire to commit murder is concealed deeply. Su Luo gave a cold snort. Nobody would have expected that now, Su Luo would actually ignore those hiding the sky and covering the earth shadowy fists smashing towards her body. She directly attacked with her dagger, firmly thrusting towards that real killing move mixed in among the fake shadowy fists. She actually could exactly and without mistake find the only killer move among countless false shadows. This ability to make discerning judgments amazed everyone. Bang, a violent collision, and Su Luo felt a portion of bone-chilling, icy cold enveloping towards her. In a flash, Su Luo condensed out flames, and was able to withstand that ice-cold killing move. When Su Luo struck with her dagger, Her dagger broke apart into fragments, while that killing move also vanished without a trace. Bang, bang, bang. Su Luo suddenly fell back more than 10 steps, unloading that heavy pressure from the colliding strikes. Chapter 508, Life and Death Agreement 7. Su Qing's ice-cold eyes unwaveringly stared at Su Luo. The hatred in her eyes was just that obvious. For what reason? That was her biggest trump card. She had cultivated this for a very long time at her teacher's sect, painstakingly practicing to produce this single trump card. Didn't expect Su Luo to be able to decipher it. Su Qing's heart was extremely annoyed and furious. She was so furious that her entire person almost went insane. Su Luo indifferently cast her a sidelong glance. Su Qing, prepare yourself well, very soon, you are about to die. Bullshit. The one who should be prepared to die is you. Su Qing appeared malevolent, glaring at Su Luo with scarlet and murderous-looking eyes. Then, wait and see. Su Luo indifferently shot her a glance. Immediately, she attacked, a violently surging blaze shooting out from Su Luo's hands. Swoosh, a sharp sound echoed. A snake of flame streaked across Su Qing's arm, leaving behind a streak of charred black flesh. Courting death. Provoked by Su Luo, Su Qing's face immediately became angry. Seeing Su Luo turn around and just about to run again, Su Qing's heart became sullen like a stifled pit of fire. The loathsome girl continuously avoided fighting with her head on, always using her advantage and speed to flee, simply not giving her a favorable position to use her skills. Su Qing chased behind Su Luo. Suddenly, a light bulb lit up in her head. When Su Luo was about to turn the corner, Su Qing's body became like an eagle, properly calculating the angle and heavily ramming toward Su Luo. Boom! After a violent sound, the sudden ramming made Su Luo stagger twice, and a thread of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. However, just this short moment of her standing still gave Su Qing a chance to take advantage of. At this moment, she again pounced toward Su Luo like a poisonous viper. Taking advantage of your illness, I'll take your life. Since Su Luo was already wounded, then she definitely would not let this opportunity go. At an angle that Su Qing was unable to see, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked up into a sly sneer. When Su Qing pounced towards her in midair, Su Luo's sleeves raised up, and 3 cold blades shot out towards Su Qing. The 3 cold tips of the blades were each aimed at the point between Su Qing's eyebrows, her throat and her heart. All these places were vital to life and death. In midair, even if Su Qing wanted to change her posture, it was too late. Flustered, she condensed out a row of ice blades in order to smash the 3 tips of the cold blades from Su Luo into pieces. However, just at this moment, Su Qing's complexion changed greatly. At this moment, Su Luo had already quietly returned to Su Qing's back, a sharp dagger fiercely thrusting towards her heart's position. Poochie, the dagger accurately and unmistakably pierced through, with blood violently surging forth. You intentionally did it. The corner of Su Qing's mouth contained a thread of blood. Her palm shot towards Su Luo, who was behind her. But Su Luo, having succeeded with one move, already took the opportunity to retreat. Su Qing's palm strike was powerless towards her. Su Qing's heart was slanted to the right. Su Luo did not know this from before. Therefore, this time, she was unable to directly kill Su Qing. A pity. Su Luo shook her head with some regret. Originally, she thought of aiming for the opponent's throat, but there was no time, so she could only search for another opportunity next time. On Su Qing's back, fresh blood continuously and madly surged forth. It soaked her skirt, drop by drop falling to the ground. In the wake of her walking about, she left behind one bloody footprint after another on the stone stage. Now Su Qing looked battered and exhausted, yet also malevolent and twisted. Everyone in the audience under the stage seeing this couldn't bear to watch. Didn't expect, the one under the winds of defeat is actually Su Qing. Truly too unexpected. Isn't Su Luo too vicious and merciless? After all, she is her older sister, yet she was still able to do it? That was the heart, to directly stab inside, simply too ruthless. Su Qing is so pitiful, however, her luck is also very bad, to actually have this kind of younger sister. Chapter 509, Life and Death Agreement. 8. All of these people were completely unaware that they just came to watch a play of sisters destroying each other. Now, each and every one of them seemed to have protective feelings for the fairer sex, to the extent that they had forgotten that it was Su Qing who had first suggested this life and death duel. People, under the condition that their interests wouldn't be harmed, will always sympathize with the weak. Underneath the stage, Su Jingyu's expression now was extremely ugly, so gloomy that water could almost be wrung out. Su Shi's face soon would be nearly distorted. She firmly bit her lips, and was able to refrain from roundly cursing out at Su Luo. Su Xian and Madame Su didn't come, otherwise, this scene would be even more unsightly. Su Luo, able to injure me to this extent, you really are not weak. I really underestimated you. Su Qing bit her teeth, stopping at every word as she slowly said, Really? Now it's already too late to notice the importance of this. Su Luo watched Su Qing with a ghost of a smile, a bright, taunting, cold smile on her face. Are you very happy? Feel that you are about to win? Unexpectedly, Su Qing smiled. Her smiling expression had become strange, making the hair on a person's back tremble with chilliness. Without waiting for Su Luo to reply, Su Qing took out some medicine from her sleeves. In one move, she stuffed all of it into her mouth and rapidly swallowed it. Su Luo's long, shapely eyebrows nodded slightly and swept her a puzzled glance. But now, in her heart was a very bad premonition. Sure enough, what shocked Su Luo was that with her naked eyes, she could see the wounds on Su Qing's back rapidly healing. How could there be this kind of medicinal pill? In the end, what just happened? Instant restoration pill? The knowledgeable people beneath the stage uttered in surprise. Oh heavens, it actually really is instant restoration pill. Looks like the purple sunflower sect really put in their blood and sweat's worth of capital this time, to go as far as even giving the instant restoration pill to Su Qing. What is an instant restoration pill? Why is it I have never heard of it? Naturally you have never heard of it, only strong experts are qualified to have instant restoration pills. Reportedly, during a fight, it could in a flash restore a person to their peak state. You can't even buy this kind of medicinal pill. Hearing the discussion below the stage, Su Luo now finally understood. Su Qing coldly smiled. Su Luo, you dare to injure me? Good, very good. Su Luo's heart trembled slightly. Once Su Qing took this instant restoration pill, not only were all of her injuries completely healed, she had also returned to her peak state. At the same time, her strength had also been upgraded. Endless amount of spirit force was bursting from Su Qing's entire body, like a volcano about to erupt, a kind of thick aura permeating throughout her entire body. Su Luo, want to kill me? Then you will die first. Su Qing took all the spirit power from her body without holding anything back and shot it out. That beautiful as a young lotus complexion now seemed terribly sinister. The brilliant spirit power condensed into shape in the center of her palm, the spirit power fluctuating until it finally formed a transparent, resplendent sphere. The transparent, bright sphere moved at a speed that ripped apart the air and ruthlessly attacked towards Su Luo. 5th rank. No, the Su Qing right now clearly was at the peak of 5th rank. Within a short 3-month period, Su Luo was promoted from 3rd rank to 4th rank, whereas it was even rarer for Su Qing, who was directly promoted from the 4th rank to the peak of 5th rank. Su Qing's speed was as fast as lightning. Her offensive attack seemed to be enveloped in thunderous explosives, simply impossible for a person to dodge. This kind of berserk fluctuation of spirit power had the strength to sweep away and destroy everything, and made the entire sky echo with crashing sounds. The audience underneath the stage could feel a strong gale, and had to squint their eyes blindly, because it made it nearly impossible for them to open their eyes. This one attack, Su Qing finally displayed her valiant strength as a person at the peak of 5th rank. Countless people, seeing this, betrayed a shocked expression on their faces. Good. Su Jingyu, in a split second, suddenly stood up, excitedly brandishing his fists. The transparent, bright sphere rent the air, coming through the splitting sky with astonishing speed. Nearly in an instant, it arrived in front of Su Luo to attack her. Chapter 510 Life and Death Agreement 9. However, Su Luo now merely stood there, calmly and unmoving. In front of her, she condensed out a great dimensional imprint. The originally darkish handprint, in a flash, became huge, becoming bigger, magnifying endlessly finally. It was so huge as to cover the entire sky over the stadium. It was very dark all around, appearing like the nightfall. The transparent bright sphere, nothingness of space. Su Luo let out a loud shout. Her finger pointed towards that transparent bright sphere. Now everyone in the audience under the stage smiled. This fourth Miss Su from Su Manor was really interesting. She was only a fourth-rank martial artist. Could it be she thought that by merely pointing like that, she would be able to stop the bright sphere? This way of thinking was too laughable, okay? Su Qing smiled. Su Jingyu smiled. That exceedingly refined, extremely beautiful woman in the second-floor private room also had a ridiculing sneer. All of the people at the scene, without exception, all laughed or smiled. Their smiles were absolutely unrestrained. However, very quickly, everyone was so startled that their jaws dropped to the ground. A mystical and miraculous scene actually occurred in front of their eyes. That transparent, bright sphere actually steadily stopped in front of Su Luo, unable to advance even half an inch. Success. Su Luo's mind was very pleased, a smiling expression flashing through her eyes. Previously, in the Cave of Flames, she had released her own spirit into her space to cultivate the space laws, whereas she was outside cultivating her fire element. Didn't expect that after obtaining that secret book, her understanding of space would advance a step further. Unexpectedly, she inadvertently fused the great dimensional imprint and the space laws together. Consequently, by a curious coincidence, it allowed Su Luo to comprehend the nothingness of space. The so-called nothingness of space was to condense out a very small area of space, relying on the great dimensional imprint, into reality. And also, this small area of space had real substance. It could be taken out to be used. Su Luo was just relying on this less than 1 square meter of space, and had stuffed that transparent bright sphere into this space, to fix it in place. But because nothingness of space was transparent, so nobody could make out the cause, and everyone looked at Su Luo vacantly with puzzlement. Even if they were to break their minds from thinking, they still wouldn't be able to realize the secret within this move. Su Qing, your stuff, I cannot afford to enjoy it. I'm returning it to you. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a mockingly cold smile. Su Luo shifted the nothingness of space, took a step out, and afterwards, she attacked that transparent, bright sphere with a heavy fist. This fist didn't give off any spirit force fluctuations. It strongly, nakedly and honestly, smashed on top of the transparent, bright sphere. Bang! Under this heavy sound, the transparent, bright sphere frantically shot towards the position Su Qing was standing at with flying speed. Immediately, Su Qing's complexion had a huge change. Only she herself knew what she had placed within the transparent, bright ball. Su Qing abruptly fell back, but it was already too late. That transparent, bright sphere shot towards her with the speed that a naked eye could see. A kind of indescribable force burst forth violently in all directions, rising like a gale, sending the sand flying, tossing the rocks, lifting up the dust. In that bright sky filled with rain, Su Qing covered her face with both hands, repeatedly howling in pain. Now Su Qing was so regretful, she nearly killed herself. Originally, she thought to use it to harm Su Luo, but the outcome, unexpectedly, was to pick a rock and crush one's own foot. Hateful, 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 Aya. What happened? Seeing Su Qing covering her face and howling nonstop, everyone was extremely puzzled. What just happened? Su Luo watched Su Qing curled up on the ground, continuously rolling around, with an indifferent smile hanging on her face. When Su Qing was condensing out the transparent, bright sphere, she had placed a poison with corrosive properties inside. Once it exploded, that colorless, odorless, transparent gas would destroy the receiving party's face. This was the reason why Su Qing was so frightened when the transparent, bright sphere shot towards her. Chapter 511, Life and Death Agreement 10. However, Su Luo's speed was just too fast. so fast that Su Qing simply didn't have the time to respond. Moreover, she simply had not imagined that Su Luo could actually stop that transparent, bright sphere and that she could actually send it back to her. Therefore, Su Qing could be considered to have outsmarted herself. Her scheme was reversed to be used against her. One could only hear the sounds of sizzling lingering on in the air, and Su Qing unceasingly howled in anguish and pain. Su Jingyu wanted to jump onto the stage, but after being swept by a slight glance from Nangong Luyin, his body didn't dare to budge even a little. So painful, so painful. Su Qing rolled around on the ground for ages. During this time, Su Luo obviously could kill her, but she didn't do it. To fight a one-sided battle, she would not leave behind a matter for others to criticize her. After quite a long while, the anguish on Su Qing's face slowly passed. She released both hands that were tightly holding onto her face. A pair of naked, scarlet, viper-like eyes stared with deadly intent at Su Luo. She was ruthless. She was very ruthless. Originally, she thought she would easily dispatch Su Luo, but she never imagined that even after having used so many hidden trump cards, unexpectedly, she was still on the losing side. Moreover, she still managed to transform herself into a neither dead nor alive appearance. Su Qing was extremely regretful and hated her. In the moment it took to see Su Qing's face, there were spectators under the stage that were cowardly and started to shriek on the spot. Oh heavens! Su Qing's face, her face, how could it be like this? Su Luo is too ruthless, killing people as if it was nothing, and she actually would still torment Su Qing like this. When all's said and done, that is still her older sister. Do you even have brains? The third person directly slapped the second person's head. That transparent and bright sphere was clearly something Su Qing herself condensed out. Su Luo was merely giving her a taste of her own medicine. Who would have known that inside it contained poison? That's right. This could only illustrate that Su Qing wanted to harm others and ended up harming herself. She reaped what she had sown. All kinds of people under the stage were spiritedly discussing this. The two people on the stage stood facing each other. Now Su Qing's face was completely destroyed. Originally, the fair complexion without a blemish, now was rotted by the poison. One patch of black, one patch of white and another patch of yellow. In some areas, the skin had even flipped outwards. Other areas were rotted away until only a pit was left behind. There was nearly no piece of good flesh on her entire face. Instant restoration pill would stop this corrosive poison. Su Qing, what other stuff did your teacher's sect give you? Don't let me be too disappointed, oh. Su Luo's indifferent voice spread throughout the arena, seemingly carrying a trace of mockery. Both of Su Qing's hands were firmly clenched into fists, continuously shaking, doing her best to control herself, definitely not going to let herself lose her mind. Her eyes were like an area of ice and gloom, with a tone carrying a chill that penetrated into the bones, and her killing intent like an ignited, raging inferno. Su Luo, since you insist on meeting death, then I will help you accomplish this. An ice-cold chill that spread to the bones rushed wildly towards Su Luo from all directions. It also seemed as if the temperature within this fighting arena was also momentarily reduced. Su Luo frowned. What other hidden trump cards did Su Qing still have? Today, she was able to injure her 2 times in a row. It was all thanks to her own luck and adapting to the fight from her first-hand experience. Luckily, at the most critical juncture, she was able to comprehend the second layer of the great dimensional imprint nothingness. Nothingness of space appearing enabled her to shoot back that dangerous, transparent and bright sphere. Otherwise today, the one who would be disfigured would be her. Su Qing's gaze was coldly detached as she stared fixedly at Su Luo, unblinkingly and unwaveringly. Her right hand was placed at the side of her lips, and she then blew out an exotic musical note. The sound of the musical notes didn't follow any rhythm. A strange atmosphere spread out from on top of the stone stage. Nobody knew what Su Qing was trying to do, but everyone was aware that Su Qing had something odd up her sleeves, because this sound was too strange. It made the hair on people's back tremble from the cold, and they had an alarming feeling of the hairs standing on end. Suddenly, a violent undulation occurred in the space between heaven and earth. A kind of matchlessly strong and violent breath, like the howling winds of torrential rain coming to sweep away everything. Chapter 5:12. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige. 1. During the time of flying sand and rolling rocks, an enormous shadow appeared on top of the fighting stage. Dragon. In the split second it took to see that enormous shadow, almost everyone's heart started to jump violently and madly. Unexpectedly, in the mundane world, the greatly admired dragon race appeared. That was an existence that only lived in legends, and was an existence that was never seen. A lindworm. In the wake of its appearance, everyone under the stage felt a kind of ultimate, oppressive and deterrence force. Under the oppressive pressure of the lindworm, they wouldn't even dare to move, and were having difficulty swallowing. How could it be a lindworm? When did the purple sunflower sect subdue a lindworm, and still bestowed it to Su Qing? This was simply too extravagant. Too enviable. You must know how formidable an existence was the dragon race. Even though the lindworm was considered the most inferior and at the outermost fringe of the dragon race, but in any case, it was still a dragon. The purple sunflower sect must have completely gone for broke for Su Qing, right? At that moment, the gaze of everyone present was concentrated upon the body of the purple sunflower sect's master. This time, 5 people came from the purple sunflower sect. One was Su Qing's teacher's uncle. The other 4 were people from the sect that had a good relationship with her. Now, confronted with everyone's freakish gazes, the 5 people all sat upright and still, their gazes fixedly staring at the stage, watching very seriously. But if you were to look more carefully, you would have discovered that the corner of their eyes had a hard-to-hide, complacent smile. That's right, to have a lindworm was already rare, and in addition, to so magnanimously bestow it upon a disciple of the sect. It could clearly be seen that the inside information of the purple sunflower sect was very deep. Once the lindworm appeared first, to say nothing of the other side. Now, first of all, the purple sunflower sect's position in the heart of the masses was rising up layer by layer. How, on the fighting stage, the lindworm thundered out a snarl. Suddenly, the world shook with the resonance from the sound which went on for a long time. With just one thunderous roar, its meaning deeply startled and terrified everyone's heart. It seemed as if that lindworm contained a terrifying force like that of an erupting volcano. A kind of terrifying force that could destroy the sky and wipe out the earth. Su Qing slowly opened her eyes. That pair of deep pupils were now apathetic like a millennium-old frozen ice, without a touch of heat and lacking any emotion. But it was unwaveringly locked onto Su Luo. Time and time again Su Luo provoked her. It was already more than she could bear. Today, if it was not her death, then she herself would die. Su Qing, you are cheating. Su Luo pointed to the WYRM dragon, and yelled out loud. Her eyes contracted slightly, a cold intent flashing through her eyes. Cheating? Ah! A very dark grim laugh appeared on Su Qing's face. Such a pitiful younger sister, don't tell me you don't know that on the fighting stage of a life-and-death duel, contract beasts are allowed to fight too? Su Luo had a displeased expression on her face, but she repeatedly laughed in her heart. So contracted spirit pets were allowed? Then that was indeed very good. This was what you, Su Qing, said with your own mouth. Ah. Seeing a touch of panic floating onto Su Luo's face, the cold intent in Su Qing's heart was even stronger. This time, how could Su Luo not die? Su Qing was proud of herself, with a feeling of victory being within grasp. Good. Since you can use a magical beast, then I can also invite my contracted magical beast. I hope when the time comes, you won't regret this. Su Luo feigned her fury and strongly narrated. Su Luo had just finished speaking, resulting in the sounds of the audience commenting under the stage. As it turns out, Su Luo also has a hidden trump card. Maybe she could also come up with a dragon, then that will be very amusing, ha ha ha. You should just continue to daydream, a mere lowly concubine's daughter, without the assistance of any sect. How could she take out a dragon? Then you can cut off my head and use it as a stool to sit on. That's right, if she could come up with a dragon, I would tear down this entire fighting arena and eat it. Chapter 5:13. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige, too. Without exception, everyone made a vow, certain that Su Luo was unable to take out a dragon because that was simply an impossible thing. But when they could clearly see the pure white puppy that appeared on Su Luo's sharp, slender shoulder, a lot of people felt everything darken in front of their eyes. They were almost about to spit out blood. Couldn't take out a dragon, then forget it, but she unexpectedly actually took out a puppy that wasn't even weaned to make up for the number? This was simply making herself a laughingstock. Everyone present suddenly burst into fits of roaring laughter. Everyone was convulsing with laughter. Every single one of them was holding their bellies, because now their abdominal areas were already cramped from laughing. However, Su Luo's face carried a faint trace of a self-confident smiling expression. It was as if it was not a puppy that stood on her shoulder, but rather a real dragon, and not just in name only. When Su Qing could see clearly the little puppy on Su Luo's shoulder, a scornful sneer that was similar to the ones the spectators under the stage had appeared in her eyes. A glowing firefly's fire also dares to vie for the splendor with the sun and the moon? Courting death. Courting death? I see the one courting death is you. Su Luo held the little puppy that stood on her shoulder in her arms, gently stroking his beautiful, pure white fur. Look closely, mine is the real dragon here. Ha ha ha. The audience under the stage that had gradually settled down now burst into laughter. Su Qing never would have thought that that day when she wanted to use the fierce panther to swallow Su Luo, her own contract beast would instead make a complete mess out of the entire Su manor, with the secret manipulator behind the scenes being this little puppy that wasn't good enough to enter her eyes. Now Su Qing's eyes were filled with killing intent. In the time it took to wave her hand, a matchlessly strong spirit force converged together in the center of her palm. Go! Su Qing shot out that spirit force with a wave of her hand. At that moment, a berserk spirit force swept toward Su Luo like a frantic rain shower. In the wake of this killing power, that lindworm's head looked to the sky and hissed. It vented its anger by shaking and railing up the sky. Afterwards, it turned around and launched itself wildly toward Su Luo. Such a formidable, murderous aura. Once this intense attack appeared, it drew a countless number of shocked gazes. Even some 5th and 6th rank experts also felt the intense oppression and deterrence. Under this kind of deterrent pressure, they seemed to have a difficult time moving an inch. Their entire body was rigid. Too terrifying. This dragon has a strength at least above the 6th rank, right? This time Su Luo really is done for. This is still considered a young dragon in its growing period. After growing up, it would be even more formidable. The purple sunflower sect really is too generous. Alas, looks like this time, I will lose my life savings. Who told you to be so greedy to insist on betting that Su Luo will win, expecting a huge upset? Thus, betting 1 on Su Luo, you will get 100, whereas Su Qing, if you bet 1, get 1. If you want to win a fortune, naturally you will bet on Su Luo. Now do you regret it? It's too late for regrets. Everyone under the stage was spiritedly discussing away. It seemed to them that Su Luo, this time, would lose for sure. After all, on Su Qing's side, the lindworm was participating. What could Su Luo possibly do? On her shoulder stood an ordinary puppy that even the commoner wouldn't want to raise. A little, fragile, tender-skinned puppy that would vanish in a puff of smoke just by a touch of dragon's breath. Momentarily, the gamblers that had bet on Su Luo winning all had both hands over their head, sighing away with alas. They couldn't bear to watch the bitter scene of Su Luo on the stage, being torn to pieces by the lindworm. Because that was simply too miserable. Roar! The enormous body of the lindworm arrived with a flying tackle, and directly charged towards Su Luo. It was like a hot knife through butter, scaring everyone witless. That power carried a berserk strength, causing Su Luo's expression to turn slightly cold. Dodge. Su Luo watched that lindworm approaching with the pressure of a mountain. Her figure was as fast as lightning, treading using the exquisite spirit dance steps. She quickly slipped to the right side. Chapter 5:14. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige 3. Roar! It pounced onto empty air, making the lindworm spit with anger. It opened up its ferocious mouth, and once more turned around to pounce towards Su Luo. The audience below the stage, seeing this, without exception, everyone's complexion greatly changed, their hearts trembling with fear. This was because if they were the ones pounced upon by this lindworm, they absolutely would be torn into pieces. For the three judges underneath the stage, a grave expression also flashed through their eyes. The honorary elder from the mercenary union, Bei Chen Mu, stroked his few strands of goat-like beard, faintly shaking his head. Purple Sunflower sect really placed a lot of blood and sweat capital in this. The president of the Imperial Capital's #1 school, Ouyangxi, nodded his head and smiling slightly said, "Looks like the fourth Miss Su will lose." The law-enforcing elder of the Imperial's elder group, Nan Gongyu, had an indifferent expression as he responded with one sentence. "Maybe not." President Ouyang let out a laugh. "You have so much belief in that young lady?" Nan Gongyu shook his head. "The one I believe in is His Highness Prince Jin." Since His Highness Prince Jin thought so highly of this girl, that could only prove one point, that girl would absolutely win. President Ouyang's gaze landed lightly on Su Luo's body, somewhat curious and also somewhat probing. Now, that lindworm was already close to pouncing upon Su Luo. Just at this time of imminent peril. Suddenly, all the fur stood erect on the little puppy's body who was on Su Luo's shoulder. He loudly howled at the enormous lindworm. "Awah!" At this moment, the little puppy steadily stood on top of Su Luo's slender and sharp shoulder, that furry little face stretched taut. His little chin lifted slightly, glaring at the lindworm in a spitting rage. He looked like a little majesty berating the lowest of servants. Seeing the lofty and serious appearance of the little puppy, the audience under the stage immediately started to laugh. The original tense atmosphere also relaxed a lot. Oh heavens, this is simply too adorable. That little puppy is really courageous. That's right, it actually dares to reprimand the lindworm. Ha ha ha. I'm dying of laughter, my belly ouch. Oh my, you guys went too far. Why would that be a little puppy? Clearly that is the fourth Miss Su's spirit pet. Such a courageous little puppy, it looks too adorable. A pity it won't live for long. A lot of people were laughing wildly at that little puppy's proud and lovable appearance. One after another, they covered their bellies, rolling around saying hey ouch. They were all itching to rush onto the stage to snatch the little puppy and raise it in their home. Now Su Qing's deep eyes contained a cynical sneer, coldly detached as she stared at Su Luo. The corner of her mouth hooked into a grim smile. Su Luo, it was already like this, how could you not die? Su Qing was extremely confident in the lindworm her teacher's sect had given her. However, very quickly, her smiling expression stiffened at the corner of her mouth. Moreover, she was unable to smile again, because once again, a strange thing appeared that made Su Qing's large eyes fall to the ground. Originally, that foolish WIRM's enormous body was already flying in mid-air. It had already extended its dragon claws, with fierce teeth spread open to engulf Su Luo. Furthermore, it was only a meter's distance away from Su Luo. But when it heard the little puppy's reprimand in mid-air, it was immediately startled, as if it had met an extremely terrifying thing. One could only see it hastily try to turn around, but it was hopeless for such an enormous body to do so. And suddenly, it sharply dropped rapidly in a straight line. Bang! The enormous body dropped heavily to the ground, smashing out a deep and gigantic dragon-shaped hole into the stone slab which formed the stage. Hiss! Everyone in the audience under the stage inhaled a breath of cold air. The audience that was initially covering their bellies from laughter were currently all staring foolishly at this dramatic scene on the stage. Their necks were stiff with a dull expression, and they looked completely at a loss. What's going on? Just now, what just happened? Wasn't it just the little puppy wailing loudly a few times? So could acting cute kill people? On top of everyone's forehead were these few words, in addition to a huge question mark. The little puppy simply didn't even need to attack. He only needed to stand on his master's shoulder, gesture with his little paw, point randomly, his little mouth roaring out loud for a time. Then that matchless lindworm just automatically dropped down? However, they still hadn't finished releasing their emotions. After the lindworm's entire body was sprayed with water, its anxious and frightened state changed. One could only see him take a leap and fly out of the deep hole. Xiaoxiaojio. Su Qing's heart stopped feeling discouraged. Seeing the lindworm jump out, she immediately commanded in a loud voice for it to quickly go up and tear Su Luo apart. But the originally obedient lindworm didn't even take notice of her. Instead, tremblingly and tottering, it walked over to Su Luo, its eyes filled with matchless respect. Go. Go. Xiaoxiao, quickly bite her to death. The uneasy feeling in Su Qing's heart increased in intensity. She concentrated all of her intent in her brain, using her mental spiritual strength to loudly command the lindworm. The lindworm was jolted, its sober black eyes blurring for a split second. It shook its head, discovered that its mind was a bit heavy. It stared fixedly at Su Luo, its originally tranquil eyes slowly showing a vicious and ruthless expression once again, abnormally ferocious and murderous looking. At this moment, the lindworm's two front claws dug into the ground, one after another, as if in the next moment, it would pounce towards Su Luo, tearing her to pieces. The lindworm was now unable to distinguish between friend and foe, giving birth to a restraining fear in people's heart. Su Luo's eyes flashed a cold stare. Yet, before she could move, the little divine dragon had already discovered something fishy with the lindworm. Chapter 5:16. The little divine dragon showed off his prestige 5. The little divine dragon was thoroughly enraged. This repulsive lindworm was truly, extremely daring to injure his little master. Scolded it and it still wouldn't listen, after hearing his commands, and still wouldn't do it. It simply was courting death. The little divine dragon was furious. One could only see him jump down from Su Luo's arms. That little round ball of a mystical beast was like an arrow shooting towards that enormous lindworm. Everyone was stupefied by this action. Pairs after pairs of eyes, without exception, were staring at the little puppy. Their eyes were heated up like a searchlight. Could it be that the little puppy was going to curse at that lindworm again? Could it be that those few sentences roared by the little puppy were an enchantment? Thinking up to here, everyone was staring at the little puppy more closely than before, concentrating all their attention, wishing they could record every breath it made. The little divine dragon was completely unaware that he was being stared at by many people. One could only see his little round body landing directly on top of the lindworm's nose. Now, when comparing the little divine dragon's body against the lindworm's, it was like the difference between an ant and an elephant. This was the reason why the little divine dragon jumped onto the lindworm's nose. Looking at this from far away, it appeared as if a single granule of black sesame seed was glued to the lindworm's nose. However, the single granule of black sesame seed like little divine dragon ruthlessly slapped towards the lindworm's face with his two sharp paws. Slap, slap, slap. The surging, slapping sounds came clearly from under the little divine dragon's paws. What made everyone even more taken aback was that the lindworm's face was scratched nearly beyond recognition by the little divine dragon. However, it was a glutton for punishment, and still actually showed something similar to a smile. It docilely gazed at the little divine dragon, as if it was an old nanny being slapped by the young master. Hiss, including those 3 highly ranked elder judges, everyone fiercely inhaled a mouthful of cold air. Furthermore, there were some that even heavily rubbed their eyes, because everything that happened in front of their eyes completely overturned their worldview from long ago. Everyone knew that the dragon race had always been violent, ruthless, and tyrannical. Consequently, nobody dared to provoke their strong ego. Even though the lindworm was at the extremity of the dragon race, at the furthest periphery, but in any case, it was also a dragon. Normally, it was awe-inspiring and mighty in all 8 directions. But now it was not faced with a dragon race, but rather, the most common little puppy. Its face was thoroughly scratched by the little puppy's paws. Unexpectedly, it still hadn't resisted. It was neither angry nor violent. On the contrary, it was meekly, humbly and reverently crawling on the ground, allowing the little puppy to tyrannize it. Even to the extent of showing consideration for the little puppy's round and short body. voluntarily lowering its head, moving its head closer to him, making it more convenient for the little puppy to beat it up. This allowed the little puppy to save some effort. This was simply so petty and low, as though it was the dust on the ground. Could it be that all the dragon race lacked oppressive force? That all had the tendency to be oppressed? Su Qing knew it was not so. It was because this lindworm had been raised within the purple sunflower sect. It had bitten no less than 100 people that fed it. But this, in the end, for what reason? Aside from Su Luo, who knew the original form of the little puppy, nobody knew why. Even Nangong Luyan was also continuously making wild guesses. Su Qing firmly stared at that little puppy. Her eyes exploded and shot out bloodthirsty rays of light. Her expression rightfully had a murderous aura that made others shiver with cold. There was definitely a problem with this little puppy. Last time it was him, just by him standing proudly and lovably on Su Luo's shoulder and gesturing. It would finally result in the rebellion of her contract beasts that she had tamed with great difficulty. Not even mentioning how disastrous and damaging it was to her. She was also berated for a period by their venerable father. Now, it was again going to use that skill, wanting to incite the rebellion of the dragon that her teacher, with great difficulty, had helped her fight for. It was simply too hateful. No, she absolutely would not allow it. I command you to go to hell. Immediately, Su Qing's fury rose dramatically, both hands turning over and forming seals, as countless spirit force converged in the center of her palm. Chapter 517. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige. 6. Su Qing condensed her spirit force into ice blades. One after another they were directly launched towards that little round ball of fur. Before Su Luo could react, and with the little divine dragon also not having enough time to react, the lindworm moved. It was more accurate to say the lindworm was furious. One could only see its body turn around, open up its bloody mouth that would frighten people, and roar in a furious tone. Roar a howl that resounded through heaven and earth. Those ice blades that were exploding towards the little divine dragon were all swept into and swallowed by the lindworm's wide open bloody mouth. Su Qing stared in astonishment at the lindworm, her eyes full of disbelief. Her lindworm? Could it be betraying her again? Su Qing was simultaneously alarmed and angry. Her mind was communicating with the lindworm nonstop. But what made her despair was that the lindworm's thoughts were like a straight line, completely unreactive to her. The little divine dragon gave a heavy snort, his very small body jumped up suddenly, and he was already sitting astride on the lindworm's horn. Awoo awoo, awoo! The little divine dragon, with one paw, grabbed the lindworm's horn, while the other paw pointed severely at Su Qing. That meaning was very explicit. The target is just up ahead. I command you to rush up. But that wasn't just any person. That was the lindworm's master, Su Qing. The original master of the lindworm. Now, the little puppy actually commanded the lindworm to turn around and to go kill Su Qing. Before, everyone had already been startled until they were nearly numb, but their central nervous system were resuscitated once again. It was because this matter was too unimaginable and too outrageous. Very likely, they would have difficulty encountering this again in their lifetime. So they must open their eyes wide to watch until they had enough. Everyone was thinking like this. At this moment, that little puppy's imposing manner was even haughtier than the dragon race's most respected golden divine dragons. Without restraint, he used his fists to beat up the lindworm, not even mentioning instigating this rebellion. The little divine dragon was still riding on the lindworm's body, even now. He demanded the lindworm to carry him to attack the original master of the lindworm. This was simply too absurd. But because it was really absurd enough, really hard to imagine, too freakish, consequently, the plot was even more thrilling. The spectators under the stage were considered to be feasting their eyes again. They truly experienced what was called many twists and turns. It was what was called marvelous, brilliant and varied. What was called uninhibited ups and downs. And the common people always loved to watch a spectacle. Go. Little puppy, quickly go. Don't hesitate again, go rush up. Quickly rush up. Quickly, 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 go bite her to death, bite her to death. Under the stage, the originally quiet audience was, at this moment, were as excited as if injected with chicken blood. They brandished their fists, unceasingly edging the fight on. These people were, without a doubt, the ones who bet on Su Luo winning. Now Su Luo might really pull off an upset. Her spirit pet was such a tiny one, but would explode with such astonishing strength. As a result, knowing victory was promising, therefore, each and every one of them stood up or jumped up to loudly cheer. Underneath the stage was an area of intense shouting. The sounds of noisy clamors. The situation at the arena was nearly out of control. But on the stage, it was a quiet area, so quiet as to be somewhat strange. The little divine dragon sat on the lindworm's body, while Su Qing was now in her mind, unceasingly ordering the lindworm. Now Su Qing was repeatedly using her mental spirit strength to suppress the lindworm. Therefore, her face was covered with perspiration and her complexion was also very pale. The little divine dragon's command and Su Qing's command was fighting in the massively cumbersome mind of the lindworm. Fighting until it got a splitting headache, and was quickly about to become delirious. The little divine dragon's heart was somewhat anxious. His eyeballs were turning and spinning around. Immediately he got an idea. He loudly shouted towards Su Luo. "Awo awo with the jade piece, the jade piece." Chapter 518. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige 7. Su Luo immediately remembered. She took out the jade piece given to her by the little divine dragon's dad from her space, and tossed it high up towards the little divine dragon. When the little divine dragon got the jade piece, excitedly and in a lively manner, he swept it past the lindworm's nose. This jade piece had the scent of Daddy Divine Dragon. Other people might not sense it, but as a member of the dragon race, how could the lindworm not know? With only one scan, the lindworm was immediately stunned. One could only see a frightened expression flash across its eyes. It continuously retreated back, with its mouth issuing scared, whimpering sounds. There was no need to say it, but it was now thoroughly incited by the little divine dragon. Aolo 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 in a flash, the lindworm's huge body was filled with an explosive strength. Abruptly, it pounced towards Su Qing. This action simply stunned everyone until their chin dropped down. Originally, they thought it was merely the wishful thinking of the little puppy. After all, how could there really be a house pet that would rebel against their owner? But this little puppy was actually able to accomplish it. He really made the lindworm go and attack its former master. At this moment, Su Qing was burning with fury and gnashing her teeth in hate, wishing she could split Su Luo into 8 huge pieces. She was itching to choke this living little puppy that specialized in getting her spirit pets to rebel to death. Seeing the lindworm having already completely defected, watching as its huge claws was just about to wave down, Su Qing's heart burst with alarm as she turned around and immediately ran. Beneath the stage, there was another burst of simultaneous gasp of surprise. Today, their horizons were really broadened. This was the first time they saw a little puppy attack a lindworm. Also, this was the first time they saw a spirit pet chase to kill its own master. Every single person had their eyes wide open, curious, excited, rejoicing in others' misfortune and also nervously staring fixedly at Su Qing running up ahead. They expressed the highest consternation and respect for her bad luck. Presently, why would Su Qing still care about how others view her? The most important thing for her right now was to run for her life. Behind her, the little divine dragon, in a lively manner and excitedly, sat on top of the lindworm's head, brandishing his little paw and continuously ordering the lindworm to increase its speed, to speed up. In front, Su Qing had already taken out all her hidden trump cards, and increased her speed to the fastest she could. Yet the distance between the two continued to pull closer, getting closer. Howl the lindworm furiously roared, immediately rushing up with a flying tackle, and pushing Su Qing down from the back. But the little divine dragon's speed was even faster than the lindworm's. When the lindworm pushed Su Qing down, the little divine dragon had already jumped on Su Qing's shoulder, and smashed a heavy fist towards Su Qing. Su Qing was punched until her vision blurred and she felt faint. Now, Su Luo was the one who didn't have a role in this play, and only served as a spectator. One could see her holding her chin with one hand and full of interest, smiling happily while watching everything. It was just as if she was watching a marvelous play that had nothing to do with her. Su Luo, quickly order your spirit pet to fuck off. You cheated. Su Qing's furious voice snarled from a nearby place. Su Luo faintly smiled. Cheating? Where have I cheated? Wasn't it you who said that spirit pets could fight? I learned this completely from you. That's right, in the beginning, Su Luo really did raise this issue, but at that time Su Qing, with the glory of the lindworm, overruled her objection flatly. Now Su Qing's heart was regretful until her intestines were green, wishing she could swallow back the words she said before. If she were to fight alone in terms of strength, she was much stronger than Su Luo. The odds of her winning was also greater. But now, Su Luo had become an observer, whereas she was besieged by two spirit pets. What was this regarded as? Order your spirit pet to return. Quickly order it to return. Su Qing was beaten up by the little divine dragon, until her vision was blurred and she felt faint. She could only seal herself in ice, exposing only her mouth that was speaking. Chapter 519. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige. 8. But how clever was the little divine dragon? He clenched his paw into a fist, with his fist directly roaring towards Su Qing's mouth. A loud bang sounded and the corner of Su Qing's mouth was smashed to crooked angle by him. She looked completely disheveled and wretched. Originally, Su Qing was spotless, pure and cold like a lotus, but now, she was beaten into a pig head by the little divine dragon. Su Luo, with a ghost of a smile, raised her eyebrows and laughed. Why ask me to call it back? This is unfair. Unfair. Su Qing's voice had a lisp, constantly whining. She had originally prepared so many trump cards, and took them out repeatedly, but they were all suppressed by Su Luo. At this moment, Su Qing truly did not have another trump card. Then, to be a little fairer, you order your spirit pet to get my spirit pet to rebel too. Su Luo had a very friendly let's discuss this tone. Rest assured, as long as you can get my pet to rebel, I would have completely no problem with it over here. Su Luo really needed a good spanking. If Su Qing's lindworm could get Su Luo's little puppy to rebel, how could the little puppy instigate the lindworm's rebellion? Su Qing glared at Su Luo with extreme anger. She was so infuriated by Su Luo that she almost vomited blood. However, Su Qing knew that at this moment, she must stay cool-headed. Consequently, she shouted loudly towards the three judges. Timeout! I request a timeout of this match. The referee looked at the three judges, and the three judges also felt helpless. They had lived for so many years, yet this was the first time they had seen such a strange scenario. But speaking of being unfair, it really didn't exist. Just like what Su Luo had said, if you have the ability, you could also order your spirit pet to get her spirit pet to rebel. This was also a part of strength. As a result, the three judges unanimously shook their heads. The referee stepped forward, indifferently swept Su Qing a glance, and announced the verdict to her. A life and death duel. Everyone's life is in fate's hand. The three judges unanimously affirmed, this duel is absolutely fair. Please continue the fight. No, this is not true, this is not true. Su Qing shouted loudly in despair. If there was no timeout in this match, she could truly die. Until arriving at this moment, Su Qing finally realized, so death was actually this close to her. She was originally confident 100 of times over that the person to die would certainly be Su Luo. Therefore, she simply couldn't have imagined that she herself would die. Su Qing wrapped herself in a thick layer of ice, wrapping herself tightly with it so it was airtight. The little divine dragon frowned, walking around this ice sculpture in circles. The Su Qing inside a layer of ice was also very anxious. Even though these two spirit pets couldn't hurt her temporarily, however, the strategy of hiding in a layer of ice also wasn't a long-term plan. Yet, before she could come up with an idea, the little divine dragon had already thought of a plan. They could only see him cleverly sit next to Su Qing's calf, and just when everyone was at a total loss towards his action, they saw him open his small mouth. A dragon breath with the fire attributed directly puffed towards Su Qing's right calf. The little divine dragon's fire attribute was not just an ordinary kind of fire attribute. Rather, it was the higher class, a third type of true fire. Thus, after a mouthful of dragon's breath, Su Qing's right calf that was wrapped in a layer of ice exposed a chunk of white flesh. Su Qing reacted and her heart immediately jumped from fright. She hastily released her spirit force, letting it hurriedly freeze over her calf. However, it was already too late. The little divine dragon's reaction was unusually fast. They could only see him open his little mouth, directly biting into Su Qing's right calf. How sharp were the little divine dragon's teeth! Even the ice-cold, mysterious black iron was a cinch, to say nothing of the fair, soft and tender human flesh. They could only hear a snapping sound. Ah! Su Qing immediately burst into a fit of shrieks that startled the heavens and broke through the clouds. Chapter 520. The little divine dragon shows off his prestige. 9. Su Qing felt an unbearable pain spread from her calf to the hundreds of bones in her four limbs. The pain made the tears in the rim of her eyes roll about. Painful, extremely painful. Su Qing felt her right calf had almost snapped from being bitten. Her mind was somewhat delirious from being stabbed by the intense pain. In a daze, she lowered her head to look at her calf. This glance nearly made her faint immediately. That was originally her imagination, but the tragedy became a reality. Her right calf had actually really broken off from being directly bitten by the little puppy. Furthermore, he was actually disdainful of her calf. After a paw sound, the small length of leg that had been bitten off actually tumbled towards the audience in the seats. It immediately caused a round of shrieks. At this moment, Su Qing's mind was in extreme chaos. She didn't know what she ought to do and how to do it, who she ought to hate and who to blame. The pain had already taken up her complete attention. Even though she had stopped to stare blankly, the hard-working little divine dragon hadn't ceased his actions. He was still diligently and tirelessly trying to bite off her other leg. Seeing the little divine dragon about to puff out another mouthful of dragon breath towards her left calf, Su Qing was so frightened that her liver and guts nearly spilled out. A swish sounded and again a whoosh sounded. Su Qing had already withdrawn the layer of ice on her body long ago, and with flying speed, she ran forward. Thus, the little divine dragon's mouthful of ice-attributed dragon's breath was wasted in vain. The little divine dragon immediately jumped on top of the lindworm's head, commanding it. "Awo, awo, awo, quickly chase, quickly chase." The lindworm understood, spreading open its claws to rapidly chase after her. As a result, a strange scene appeared. Su Qing, with a calf that had been broken off, ran rapidly up ahead. Behind, the little divine dragon sat on top of the lindworm's head, continuously chasing after her. At this moment, Su Qing's mind was unprecedentedly clear. No, out of the question, she could not just die like this. Absolutely out of the question. What must be done? Su Qing's eyes that cried out for help constantly swept below, where her teacher's uncle and her fellow students from the same sect sat. They would absolutely save her. Because of her survival instinct, Su Qing didn't even think and directly rushed off the stage. Su Qing actually ran off the stage? What kind of rhythm was this? Everyone was rigidly staring at Su Qing. For a moment, everyone boiled over. Where was the sense in her to run off the stage in a life-and-death duel? Was this still a life-and-death duel? You must know, if you didn't fight and instead ran away, your name would be on the wanted list on the mainland with a bounty. However, Su Qing didn't care. It was only until this moment did she know that nothing was more important than her life. As long as there were green hills, she's not afraid there wouldn't be firewood to burn. She hadn't avenged her hatred, so she still couldn't die. When Su Qing's body was just one step away from the audience under the stage, all of a sudden, Su Qing felt something was amiss. Suddenly, a gigantic, dark shadow appeared above Su Qing's head. This great dimensional imprint wasn't that large, but its speed was surprisingly fast. It smashed directly onto Su Qing's head. Bang! A loud noise sounded. The great dimensional imprint firmly smashed down on Su Qing's head. It smashed her until she became dizzy. Her eyes immediately were spinning like a hypnotic spiral. Su Luo, stop. No matter what, she is still your older sister. This is a fact that will never change. This is you about to murder your own older sister? Su Jingyu was unable to bear it anymore, as he stood up to loudly roar at Su Luo. Su Shi, who was also unwilling to fall behind, started to directly curse at Su Luo. How could you be like this? Don't tell me you really want to kill second older sister? Su Luo, you are simply too vicious. Could your heart be so sinister? The surroundings immediately became silent. This was the Su Manor's family matter. It was not good for them, as the ones watching this spectacle, to meddle. Faced with the denouncement of her two siblings, Su Luo crossed her arms at her chest and indifferently pointed at the stage. Where is this? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.